And hello and welcome back, and I just sort of want to jump right into it, so let's keep going. The Shibuya Earthquake and the strange light. And the relationship they had with our powers. What happened last time? Trying to remember. Sorry, I've been doing a bunch of stuff since the last time I played this. I rode around in my bed thinking about everything that had happened. Then I thought back to that crazy look in Labcoat's eyes. She looked just like the pyrokinetic. The desire to kill, I assume, yeah. Did Minamisawa Senri hate me for what I had done that day? Did she still hate me even now?
そんなバカな。子供の頃の話だぞ。いくらなんでもそんな昔のことで。
People can be mad about the stupidest stuff. I guess my thought is more just that's not a reason to think that she wouldn't be mad. But there's certainly potential reasons she wouldn't be mad, right? I try to say it aloud to convince myself. And again, the fact I still have this feeling that she stopped attacking because she realized this isn't who I was looking for. I thought this was someone else. And what was my theory from before? I thought that the fact that she kept showing up is that she's going after the group that's doing the murders. Because you know what we haven't talked about for a while? The murders. It actually has been quite a while, hasn't it? But that pyrokinetic wasn't behaving like a normal person. It was hard to think that she was sane. She was a beast, an animal without conscience that was stalking the streets of Shibuya with bared fangs. At least, that's how she seemed to me. And the terrifying words she said when she saw me. She looked at me and she said, I found you.
結局、僕は知らないうちに自分の命をわざわざ危険にさらすような事件に首を突っ込んでしまってたのか。
The more I thought about it, the more my blood began to run cold. If I'd known this was going to happen, I would have just listened to Kurisu to begin with.
って何を弱気になってんだ。
Wait, didn't you choose to go into this with the powers, or there was a point where you were like, there's nothing I can do, so I'm going to double down on the powers part. Yeah. I sat up on the bed. That's right, I had my power. Even if that woman was Minamisawa Senri, and she was trying to kill me out of revenge, I wouldn't just sit there and let her.
ただ
What if she attacked me when I was with Kurisu? And what if things got so dangerous that I couldn't protect my own life, or Kurisu's, without killing her? Could I kill Minamisawa Senri right in front of Kurisu? Now you're acting like a superhero in that frame of mind. Yeah. I almost slept up at the sudden noise. Sound was from my new smartphone. You got a new smartphone? When did that happen? Finally got a new one before I went to the hospital today. I totally forgotten. I remembered how Ito had gotten a call from my own phone after I'd lost it, and I hesitated a little. I looked at the screen trembling. Caller? Oh no, he's Serika.
なんだ、おのえか。
You had to pick the most annoying ringtone! Finally.
もしもし。
ああ、タク？ヤッホー。
どうしたんだよ。
もしかしてご機嫌斜め？今日の検査で何かあった？
You know what we haven't had in a while? We haven't had any of those delusions in a while, have we? We haven't had anything like that in a long time, have we?
そういうわけじゃないけど。
If that's the choice system, does that just mean that we've long passed the point of no return for a route and whatnot?
ダメだよ、ごまかしても。そういう声の時のタクはだいたい悩んでる時なんだから。
Evidently, it wasn't just Kurisu and Arimura who could tell I was lying.
で、何を悩んでたの？
I wasn't sure if I should tell her, but it was Serika I was talking to after all. I told her everything I'd been thinking about.
白い光？
あの時尾上も僕と一緒にいたよな。何か覚えてないか？
それがね、私倒れて気絶しちゃってたから光とか見てないんだ。ほら、タクが病院まで運んでくれたでしょ。
That is... Oh, you're talking about that.
ああ、そういえばそうだったな。
I can still remember how Sarka felt when I carried her on my back. Until then, I hadn't really treated her differently than any other boy, but at some point she started to grow into a woman. When I carried her on my back, I was surprised. That was what a girl felt like. They're talking about the earthquake, right? That traumatic event? What an odd time for that to dwell on your mind.
あの時はごめんね。ありがとう。
今さらなんだよ。僕とお前の仲だろ。
幼なじみってやっぱりいいね。
Or am I forgetting something? I might be forgetting something. If there's like another event, like the earthquake is what comes to mind at the very least. I don't remember any other time that happened. Sarka sounded happy, but the tone of her voice quickly dropped.
あ、でものんちゃんの幼なじみのあの子はのんちゃんやタクを悩ませてるんだよね。困ったね。
お前も気をつけろよ。昔地下施設で南沢千里を目撃したのは僕だけじゃないんだからな。
大丈夫だよ。きっとタクが守ってくれるから。
No pressure.
あれ？もしかして守ってくれないの？
いや、そういうわけじゃない。ただ、その...
Oh, are you saying you're not... Wait. Are you not planning to protect me? No, I'm not planning to protect you. Nor yes, no, I'm not planning to. Negatives. I fell silent, but I could tell that Sarka was nodding to herself on the other side of the phone.
ああ、そっか。それで迷ってるんだね。
And then, even though I hadn't said anything, she seemed to realize my problem. Could I kill someone if it meant saving someone?
でもね、タク。多分のんちゃんなら相手が幼なじみでも親友でもタクを守るためにためらわないでやっつけると思うんだ。もちろん私もだよ。タクのためならどんなことでもするし、誰にも負けないと思う。絶対に。
Some confidence?
尾上。
タクはどうかな？
Actually, that is a weird amount of confidence. Hey, Sarka, have you killed someone for me before? I feel like I should ask that question. Wait. Sarka's the killer. She's been killing people in order to protect Takaru for in some capacity, somehow. Maybe. Maybe she was right. Kirsten would probably kill her friend if it was the only way to protect us.
でも、そんなことクルスにさせていいわけない。
That woman really was Minamisawa Senri. It wasn't Kirsten who needed to do it. It was me, right? Well, that's even assuming she remembers you. You have this thing about, like, she wants revenge and whatnot, and I guess that might be the case. But I really feel like there's flags saying that, she's going after someone else. Because it's a little, at least in his assumptions, and I know it's just because he doesn't know about the other shit going on, potentially. And I mean, shit, we don't really know what's going on or not. But there's probably a lot of shit going on in the background that, despite us being this far into the game, we haven't really gotten any, like, visibility on. Like, we haven't heard anything about, like, that, like, text group that was like, fuck him up or something, that seemed to want to do shit to him, right? Oh, we haven't heard that in a long time either.
あ、でも今日は18日だよね。
Oh, is it murder time?
どうしたいきなり。
Following Sarka's conversations was as impossible as ever.
あのね、次の事件はすぐには起きないんじゃないかなって。
すぐに起きない？
What? I looked at the calendar and then realized.
次は23日か。
Oh my goodness, it's still like almost a week until there's another murder? It's already felt like it's been forever. Can we please get some murder? Come on. If these killings are following the Next Generation madness, the next murder would be on the 23rd. After that would be Yummy Hand on October 28th, DQN Puzzle on the 4th of November. If we could get through the 23rd, we'd be safe for a while.
だからそれまでは安全かも。
But you know, if not, then make sure your affairs are in order before the 23rd. Honestly, it's like...
とはいえ、23日になったら24時間逃げ回らなきゃいけないんだよな。
だったらその日はみんなで一緒にいようよ。いくら恨みを持ってるからってみんなのいる場所に堂々と出てくるなんてできないじゃない。
なるほど。やっぱりそういう作戦しかないか。
I'm guessing there's such a big gap for some reason in the original game's story. Probably something similar where they go and actually explore the topic of whatever was happening, and then they came back to the murder stuff or something like that. If we could avoid the murder that way, we'd win.
部活のみんなにも協力してもらって深夜までやってるお店に入っちゃうとか、佐久間先生さえ許してくれれば青葉寮で合宿してもいいかも。
尾上、お前意外と考えてるんだな。
なんかすっごく褒められちゃった。
Okay, sure, why not? See, I guess here's where I'm sort of at. I'm not sure where this is gonna go next, not just because my memory of what just happened is fuzzy. It just doesn't feel like they have much in terms of a lead to do anything with, and yet they have like 5 days until serious shit's supposed to happen again. No, it's not. It's not a compliment at all. But whenever I was in trouble or worried about something, Serica had always been there to listen. She's one of the few people who really understood me. Of course, I was too embarrassed to tell her that, and I had no plans to ever do so.
それじゃあタク、おやすみ。いい夢見てね。
ああ、おやすみ。
I hung up and then looked at the calendar on the wall again.
10月23日。犯人はどう動き、どんな犯罪を犯すんだろう。それは本当に何らかのメッセージなんだろうか。そして狙われているのはこの僕か、それとも。
Just like we expect, nothing happened over the next few days. Oh, are we just gonna jump to it? I actually would be interested if we're gonna jump to it. There was no sign of that woman, and no new arson cases, which meant no new news about the case. For my part, I was trying to figure out how to use my power to protect everyone, instead of just screwing around like I had before. And then the day was upon us. Okay. Someone's gonna die. Okay.
とりあえず今のところは何もなしか。
Okay, as a friend group, I have to be open and honest about this. I think we should start a betting pool for who's going to die. I'm just saying, we have enough information. We should be able to make some semblance of guesses, and we should be able to stake our money on it, especially for someone who might die soon. So me not being the one dying would mean, you know, nice little windfall, win-win, right? So I guess between... I know 3 psychics, or 4 psychics, I suppose. Oh, let's think about this. How would I go for thinking about who would be the next to die? I'm going to assume this isn't going to come to a head with whatever murder this is. I assume there's going to be... Let's assume there's a murder for everything. There's 3 left, right? And we know in person 4 different psychics, right? Me, Arimura, little girl that I'm not remembering the name of, and pyrokinetic girl, right? Minamisawa. If I was going to be a betting man on who is going to die today, it would probably be the pyrokinetic. Why? Because the game feels like it's trying to tell me that, yeah, she might be the murderer. And what if you really want to go through with this, I think the most likely thing to happen would be, oh shit, she's not the murderer, we know nothing. And to use that as a twist. If I'm going from like a pure narrative perspective, that would be my bet on who dies today. Or it could just be some random person that no one's ever met before. Which, you know, defeats the purpose of a betting pool.
あ
よかったっすね、宮代先輩。これもわざわざひなえちゃんが付き合ってあげてるおかげっすよ。感謝の印として、今度専属屋のマンゴーフルーツパフェご馳走してくださいね。
You know, if I was in his shoes right now, I might actually do that.
何言ってんだ。お前だって狙われてるかもしれないだろ。お互い様ってやつだ。
Not necessarily for helping, but, you know, just my general appreciation for her participation in this. There is definitely an element that makes me feel as though her reasoning for being involved here is much... There are more reasons than she has let on, basically.
うわー、ドケチ。ちょっとみんな、気を抜くのが早すぎるわ。問題はこれからなんだから。
Oh, here's another question. Being on the 23rd, does it need to be during a local time? Or can it be just like the 23rd somewhere in the world, technically? Probably local time. So I'm just trying to think of like reasons we might want to keep our guard up outside of the 24-hour period. Nothing had happened during school. I mean, we should probably keep our guard up no matter what, but still. We've made sure that nobody was alone during break periods, and it had paid off.
なんだ山添。
私も一緒にここにいてよかったんでしょうか。学園の生徒でもないのに。
No one's gonna question it. You're wearing the uniform, right? I think. Actually, no, she also...
今日は特別だ。君だって能力者なんだから狙われないとも限らないだろ。
And she's also looks like she's a kid, but there is a lower aged, like middle school buy, so it might not look so weird as a result of that.
そういうこと。今日が無事に終わるまで絶対に私たちと離れてはダメよ。
はい。
Yuki had seemed uncomfortable in this new environment all day.
で、これからどうすんだ？
そろそろ学校も人が少なくなるし、移動した方がいいわね。
渋谷で遅くまで空いている店へ行こう。悪いけどみんなも付き合ってくれるか？
しょうがないっすね。その代わり宮代先輩のおごりでよろしく。
有村、他のメンバーはともかくお前は割り勘だ。
先輩ひどい。鬼、悪魔。
Call me whatever you want.
それでどこ行くの？
カラオケとか？
できれば懐的に優しいところにしてくれ。
だとすると、行き先はいつものあそこだね。
The cafe? Yep.
よう来たの。ゆるりと過ごしてゆくがよい。
Are you relevant as a kid? We don't even have a name for you. It's just so girl. Are you relevant? Are you going to be story relevant? You keep having artwork, and you're the only one with artwork that hasn't been like very distinctly story relevant.
どうも。お主たちか。好きな席に座ってよいぞ。
We chose a seat by the window with a good view. Oh, it's like, and she's some girl that looks like she could be a little kid, too. You think she might have the same affliction as our... I'm blanking on her name again. our one friend that we have with us. Cafe Lax took over a whole floor of a classy two-story business building near Shibuya's residential district. With a window seat, we could see all around the building, and we'd spot that pyrokinetic, Minami-sama Senri, that's who she was, immediately.
閉店までここにいられるね。
そのためにはたくさん注文しなきゃ。すみません。
もう一度確認しとくぞ。有村は自腹だからな。
どれ、注文は決まったのか？忙しいからさっさとオーダーするように。
I mean, we could wait a little bit if we just want an excuse to be here longer.
店員さん、忙しいなら私もお店の手伝いをしますので。
No, don't. No. We want to keep you with us for safety reason. Come on.
は？
こらこら山添、客は手伝わなくていいんだからな。ていうか手伝っちゃダメだからな。
そうなんですか？
そうなんです。
あ、私はここからここまで全部お願いします。
だから有村、どさくさに紛れてそういう注文するな。お前には絶対におごらないからな。
I have a feeling he couldn't if she did that.
お前、何うなってんだよ。
さっき食べたシュークリームのクリームが髪についちゃって。
How? What? Okay. I just had a thought. I wonder if Arimura kept trying, not just for like the joke, but she's like can tell that he's lying and that he actually would be willing to pay for parts of it. So she just kept trying to push it and hoping that he would break each time from his current stance. How could she pull that off with hair that length?
花ってば大きなあくび。
伊藤もだ。いくらなんでも気を抜きすぎだろ。
それにお行儀が悪いわよ。
んなこと言ったってしょうがないだろ。何時間もただだらっとしてるだけなんだから。
It's bad manners to yawn? Huh. We've been at Cafe Lax for 4 hours already. At first, everyone had been tense and alert, but it seemed we were starting to hit our limits. I assume we have someone checking the internet to ensure that if we learn that someone else died, we would know about that sooner or later. Arimura and I seemed to be relaxing a little. If we were alone, we would have been afraid, but now we were surrounded by our friends. And if you added in the waitress and the other customers, there are even more people here now. I couldn't imagine someone just barging in and attacking.
おいこら、お主ら。
The waitress had walked over at some point while I was looking out the window and was standing next to me.
一体何時間粘るつもりじゃ。これ以上注文せんのならいい加減。
ああ、します。注文メニューください。
I guess we had to order extra after all. It's only natural, but it was putting a big dent in my budget for the month.
ほれ、メニューじゃ。
ありがとうございます。タク、何頼む？
Something that will last a very long time. Shall we get some coffee and just sip on it for hours on end? Actually, coffee might be a good idea. Coffee, tea, whatever that would get them a bit more alert.
そうだな。なるべく安いもの。安いもの。
As I flipped through the menu, I saw...
Huh?
That's a Suma sticker, that's a Suma sticker. Chuck it, chuck it, chuck it, chuck it, chuck it, chuck it, chuck it! Felt horribly dizzy, my eyes started to go blurry. I felt bad, it hurt to breathe.
夜と同じだ。
The 11th Sarge. which I tortured Arimura and I on the night we were attacked by the pyrokinetic, was right in front of me. Everything started to go dim.
ダメだ
Stay strong, don't lose it! Close, don't lose it! Close it, close it, close it, close it, close it, close it! Okay, I managed to get a hold of myself. Okay, good to know. I'm not sure what that last part was. I think that's happened on the previous ones where it has that like digital effect for it closing out. I don't think we've ever explained that. I've assumed it's just been style. Ooh, people are gone. What? Where did everybody go? That made no sense. How?
グルスお前いた
Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, I have a bad feeling about this. Is it? Oh, shoot. Based on my vague memory of the previous killings in the previous one, I feel like some of them involve multiple people dying, so, bad feeling. Where?
和樹有村山添
Okay, so if we know anything about the previous ones, it did seem as though people were going through some semblance of warped perception as to what was going on. In terms of the actual people that were dying. At least one of them. Not only my friends, but even the waitress had disappeared. Presumably right before seeing... Well, right around seeing the, Well, they presumably would have seen it at some point, yeah? The thingamabob. The sticker. Everybody was gone.
嘘だろ誰かいないのか
I called out to the back of the cafe, but there's no sign that anyone was there.
くそなんでだよ
This sounds...
このこと
All the sound had disappeared from the world. Is it later than it was? Was it evening or was it dead of night? Did time pass without us realizing it? Is that what happened? Is that why no one's here? Music that had been playing in the cafe was gone. So were the sounds of the cars that sometimes pass by on the road. Okay, then definitely the perception. It's definitely a matter of his perception being warped. Oh, is this going to turn into him killing someone? Because he thinks it's the pyrokinetic? And it's really like one of his friends? There's nothing but strange silence and dark gloom. I can only hear one thing. That terrifying sound. She's getting closer. Footsteps were coming up the stairs to the cafe. Shivering with fear, I first Mrs. quietly opened the door to the cafe and then snuck out into the landing. Trembling, I looked down the stairs to the first floor. There I saw... Our eyes met. Our eyes met for an instant. I saw those eyes like cold fire looking at me from beneath that hair that covered her whole face. I knew what that was.
あれはこの前のパイロケーシス南沢先
As if she could sense my fear. Minamisawa Senri looked at me and smiled. It was the smile of a beast that had found its prey.
見つけた
That's a place to end the chapter. That's a place to end the chapter. Huh. I gritted my teeth to keep from screaming and then ran back into the cafe. I closed the door as quietly as I could. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm so scared. She's gonna kill me. She's going to kill me. She's gonna kill me. She's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. Let's think about this logically.
誰か
Let's think about this logically. What we know that those stickers can do is that they incite the ability within a person, right? There's some element of it that causes someone's ability to reboot or whatever it was all called, to extend and place different thoughts and perceptions, observation in other people's minds, and it makes that go into overdrive in some capacity. And then there's the delusions that you have connected to it, which I imagine are part of that just imagination and whatnot. I imagine there's some capacity to this that seeing those basically makes someone vulnerable to having their delusions or some semblance of a situation being just placed into their mind and made real in some capacity. In some capacity being the important thing there. In the same way that the very first person that we saw was cutting up what he thought was, meat or cheese or something like that, and it ended up being not that. I think this is going to be the same thing. I think this is going to be something along the lines of what happened to What's-Her-Face from the detective agency, where this whole situation seemed to play out and then it just didn't actually technically happen, but it was real enough for the ramifications of it to partly play out in terms of Yuki being able to escape, right? So I think this is going to play out in a way where basically what I said before, he's going to find the courage to fight back and he's going to kill someone who isn't actually her. I tried to scream for help, but my voice got caught in my throat. No, even if I'd been able to yell, no one's there to help me. Kurisu's gone, Seriko's gone. So were Ito, Arimura, Kazuki, and Yuki. Even the waitress had disappeared. And the lighting seemed to have turned a faded yellow too. The cafe was much darker than usual.
どうして誰もいないんだ
Think about it, try to think about it logically. Come on, we can do it, come on. Takeru, you're better than this. Okay, you're probably not better than this, but you need to do that. I was too scared to speak or do anything except slowly move backwards from the door. Finally hit the wall, and I found myself with nowhere to run. Are you capable of using your power with only her there? I could knock her flames away again. I tried desperately to psych myself up for the fight. But I couldn't see it. The sword wouldn't appear. No matter how many times I tried to concentrate, the terror won out, and the D-sword refused to appear. More reason to think that this is a delusion or something else of that nature. Past the entrance to the cafe, I could hear the loud clicking of a heel against the floor, and the sound of a leg sliding along the ground. She's bringing me a merciless death. I looked around and saw a door on the other side to the kitchen. It was the employee's bathroom. I flung myself away from the wall, ripped open the door, and went inside. Then I locked the door with trembling hands. There are no windows in the bathroom. I run inside without even bothering to turn on the lights, so it's pitch black. In that cramped and closed space, my heart started to pound fast and my breathing became heavy. She's going to hear me. I need to be quiet. Put my hand over my mouth to stifle the sound. I want to breathe. But if I couldn't be quiet, she'd find me, she'd kill me. You know, I saw Henry's footsteps. Finally reached this floor. And then she stopped. Suddenly, and there was an eerie silence. I could almost sense somehow that she was looking for me. Just go away. Leave me alone. I prayed, but it was a waste of time. She came inside the cafe. The footsteps started again. Slowly, slowly. The woman slowly moved around the cafe. I could hear her dragging her leg from one side of the cafe to the other, as if she was toying with me. Each time she moved, she knocked glasses and cups to the floor, where they shattered. All I could do was try not to scream. I remembered all the horrible ways the other psychics had died. Don't look at me. Leaking noise, revolving dead. Got to in death. Was that going to happen to me too? No. I don't want to die like that. How much time passed after that? Suddenly, Minamisawa Senri's footsteps started to get farther and farther away. I couldn't tell from here, but it felt like she might be about to leave. I concentrated as hard as I could, listening to these eerie footsteps. I could hear a door open and close, and then that awful dragging sound again, this time going down the stairs. And soon, there's no sound at all. Oh, I panted in relief. Now I wouldn't die in the new generation madness. Oh no, 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 I forgot about that, I forgot about that, I forgot about that, I forgot about that. Suddenly there's a knock at the door. It was so utterly unexpected that I couldn't stop myself from screaming. The knocking stopped for an instant. I could sense that someone's looking at me from the other side of the flimsy door. Oh god, that is a creepy situation. Don't they have a... Actually, don't they have a background for this already? From when we were in the hospital, they had like a inside a bathroom stall. The knocking started again. And slowly but steadily, it continued. The interval between each knock was identical and mechanical. Knock, 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 knock. I tried to get as far away from the door as I could. But the bathroom was tiny, and there was nowhere to run. Don't do anything rash, don't do anything rash. I will just let her kill me. Catch her, my damn self. Don't do anything rash, don't do anything rash. Could I beat a pyrokinetic with my bare hands? The thought flashed through my mind for an instant, but I didn't think I could take the terror anymore. I was at my limit. No, Takaru. Think about how everyone died. Almost every single person that died, I think, like, was basically self-inflicted. Don't do anything rash. Just don't do anything. Let it pass. Come on, come on, come on. I screamed, unlocked the door, and slammed into it as hard as I could. The bathroom door opened with a bang. Oh, okay. Are you hurt? Overcome with terror, I screamed and slammed the person in front of me to the floor. But at the last minute, someone grabbed my head from the side. I smelled a pleasant scent that I knew well.
Huh?
Okay, I think I was mostly right. Oh, what were they trying to get him to do? Was it legitimately to, like, fight back and kill the pyrokinetic and accidentally kill someone else instead? That's the only thing that would make sense in terms of how to have killed someone through the delusion they were providing there. How required... I guess that's another question. Whatever they're doing to these people, how required is it to be, like, taking something from their own memories and perceptions and their own trauma and terror and stuff like that? I wonder. I guess it would make sense that there'd be some semblance of a requirement there, because it needs to be playing from their actual memories, something that seems logical to them, right? Kurusu was beside me, holding me. And
重いよタク潰れる中身が出る
the person I knocked to the floor was Serica. Any more and I would have hurt her.
宮代先輩、すっげえ大胆。こんな場所でセリの初めてを奪おうとするなんて。
Ah, that's not helping.
違う、そんなことより。
I shook off Kurusu's arm and stood up.
あの女。
あの女？
Everyone looked confused. Serica stood up, rubbed her butt, and started to look around the room.
あの女って誰？
だから今ここにいたろ。僕を殺そうとして。っていうか、お前らこそ今までどこにいたんだよ。
あ？どこって、ずっとここにいたぞ。
Ito stood up from the sofa on the window. Yamazoe and Kazuki were sitting next to him, with surprised looks on their faces.
なあお主ら少しばかり騒がしいの。これ以上迷惑になるようなら即刻出て行ってもらうが。
Even the waitress was here too.
そんな。確かに僕は襲われたんだ。しかも店には誰もいなくて。
I'm not sure how much my logic there is born from the fact that I've seen perspectives he hasn't, but it really is sort of frustrating that I hope they put it together soon, basically.
いや、違う。夢なんかじゃない。何もかもリアルだった。
I could still remember the sound of her leg dragging and the sound of the knocking at the door. Just thinking of them made me shiver.
ってことは、これもあの女の南沢千里の能力なのか。偽のカベラックスを作り出し。
Oh, if he keeps assuming she's the killer, I'm gonna pull my freaking hair out. There are so many reasons to think that's not the case, even from his perspective. Oh, so we can assume that the knocking is part of the rebooting delusions and whatnot. Who has heard the knocking? Was it just... I'm trying to remember if anyone else has brought it up, because there was the hotel incident. I'm trying to remember if Arimura or Serica mentioned anything about hearing that at that point. Like, is it directed at one person? Specifically... where else have we heard it? The phone? Oh, shoot, I mean... Did the others hear the phone ring when we got called when it shouldn't be possible? I thought she was just a pyrokinetic. Could she do that as well?
いや、それとも彼女の手助けをしている能力者がいるのか。
Okay, let's make this abundantly clear. The concept as presented to us makes it sound like literally anyone could potentially make... Well, anyone with the psychic powers could potentially make any delusion, observation, perception of the world a reality. I assume powers are just what comes more naturally to people due to their specific... knowing how stories work, probably trauma or something, right? Either way, actually I feel like we've discussed that a little bit before too. Either way, the possibility we discussed at Newspaper Club meeting was right and in a bad way.
ちょっと大丈夫タクル。ひどい汗よ。
Kurusu took out a handkerchief from her pocket and started to gently wipe the sweat off my forehead. But suddenly her hand stopped. She looked at me, face pale. Oh shit, did that actually result in something happening to me?
タクル、あなた、目から血が。
How? What? What happened to me? I put my hands up to my eyes, surprised. Is it just, like, overexertion from the real booting? Is it from, like, my brain? When I tried to rub them, I felt something slick. And when I looked at my hands, they were bright red. I could see my blood on the handkerchief, too. Had I been so scared and tense that my blood vessels around my eyes had burst?
どうしたのそれ。
大丈夫か宮代。
あ、
父さんに見てもらわなきゃ。行こう、タク。
It's probably a good idea. Kirsten and Serka tried to drag me out of the cafe. I could see Ito, Arimura, Kazuki, and Yuki in the corner of my eye, trying to figure out what to do. Follow us, stay as a group, stay as a group. I turned to them and said,
伊藤、有村、和樹、山添、お前たちも一緒に。
はい。私もいいんですか？こんな時間に。
遠慮なんかしてる場合じゃない。能力者がターゲットにされてるのは間違いないんだ。今日が終わるまでとにかく離れちゃダメだ。
Yep, that's a smart move. We left Cafe Lax and headed for the Alba Clinic. Okay. That's probably a good place to end it for this recording session.
ああ、特に目に異常はねえな。角膜も綺麗なもんだし、血圧もほぼ正常と。
No problem with the eyes, but behind the eyes... Okay, well... I feel like things are starting to... I really hope they start putting some stuff together that seems like it's becoming increasingly obvious. Because there's stuff... I really hope they do. Because if this becomes dragged out... If this just becomes another few hours of me being like, please figure this thing out. Please figure out this basic element so we can move forward from that. Because I feel like I've been at that point for like hours at a time. It actually might become frustrating. Well, again, I'll be back soon. So, till then, drive safely, everyone.
ああ、特に目に異常はねえな。角膜も綺麗なもんだし、血圧もほぼ正常と。
And hello and welcome back. Let's just get into it again. Dad nodded as he looked at me.
頭痛はするか？体のどこかが痺れるとかは？
特には。
視界の一部が欠けてたり、狭くなったりもしてないな？
うん。
そっか。なら大丈夫だ。
Right, bar the whole bleeding thing, which, you know, might mean something.
本当に？もっとよく見て。
I mean, where did the blood come from? Can we determine that? Just declaring that we're fine seems like a bad idea. Kirsten is sitting next to me, worried.
さっきからそればっかだな、お前。
だって。
まぶたの裏に血管があって、稀にそれが切れることがある。ひどい緊張や興奮をして力が入ったり、踏ん張ったりするとな。覚えがないか、タグル。
Okay, are they going to heal easily? I've not honestly dealt with a lot of burst blood vessels in my life, so I don't remember if that's easy. I remember the attack, shivered, nodded before Dad could see.
だろう？それが原因だよ。心配ない。
And Dad called up my chart on the computer, same one he'd been using since I was in a coma. He started to type something.
おいおい、ノノ。そんなおっかない顔で睨むな。
タクルに何かあったらどうする気？
わかったわかった。
Dad stopped typing and opened another page on the chart.
タグル、紹介状書いてやるから、明日また頭の中の写真撮ってこい。
でも。
いいからいいかって。可愛い娘が怒って口聞いてくれなくなったら困るんだよ。
I mean, it could be that. It could be something else. I mean... Dad wrote me another referral to the same hospital as before, which was finally enough to satisfy No-No.
ああ、そうだ、ノノ。お前、 自分もまだ病み上がりだってことを忘れんなよ。
あ、うん。そうね。ごめんなさい。
分かってりゃいい。
Dad smiled. Cruz and I thanked Dad and then went up to the dining room where the rest of the group was waiting.
ああ、ウキ。私アップルティー。
私も。わかりました。伊藤さんは？
コーヒーブラックで。
He doesn't seem like a black coffee sort of person. When we got to the dining room, Yuki was running around getting drinks for everyone. I looked at the clock, and it was almost 11 p.m. There's just one more hour until October 23rd was over.
で、さっき何があったのかちゃんと説明してくれるんですよね、宮代先輩。
Okay, we explain really quickly. She looked over and she had the same joking voice she used at school, but her eyes were serious. She seemed to have come up with her own ideas as to what might have happened to me, and her eyes were gloomy as they were when we first met.
話すよ。例のパイロキネシストのことだから。
Hey, Arimura, I'm trying to remember, did you ever even try to explain the whole you're gonna die thing? Because that's such a weird thing to never get explained unless I'm just not remembering it. Because it hints at having knowledge beyond. And without an explanation. It's just suspicious.
南沢千里。
I glanced at Kurusu just for a second. I thought she wouldn't want to hear that her old friend might be a serial killer.
クルス、もう自分の部屋に戻っててくれ。父さんかユイのところへ行っててもいい。
うん。
クルス。
聞きたいの。
そっか。
I sat down.
じゃあ。
I sat down in a chair on the dinner table, at the dinner table, and after a moment's hesitation, slowly began to describe what happened to me at Cafe Lax. As I talked, the terror started to come back to me, and my own hands were covered in a nasty sweat. I didn't want to look bad in front of everyone, but I couldn't stop my voice from shaking.
それでその後は知っての通りだ。ドアを飛び出したら外は。
There was a silence for a moment after I finished. Arimura especially seemed to be lost in thought. That was, of course, because Minamisawa Senri was probably after me, her, or Yuki.
殺されてたまるか。
Interesting comment to make. Again, it's gonna annoy me. They don't put together at all. Okay, so. Please come to a conclusion that's similar to my own. Come on. She whispered in a low voice, suddenly stuck her hand out in the air.
おい。
Yamazoe and I moved away surprised. Arimura had suddenly drawn her D-sword.
お前何を。
決まってるでしょ。武器ですよ。
武器。
あんたも出せるんだよね、ウキ。もしあいつが現れたら戦う。手伝いなさい。
戦うって、私、そんな。
いいから早く。
Yuki tried to shake her head no, but when Arimura glared at her threateningly, she bit her lip. And then she reached out her hand. Oh, that's way more demonic than I thought that would be. A giant sword appeared in her hand, too.
宮代先輩も早く。
そんなこと急に言われてもどうやって抜いた。
役に立ちませんね。
Give or take. I could hear how annoyed she was. It's been a long time since I'd seen her act this cold.
ねえ、何？どうしたの？
Arimura is acting impulsively, which does indicate that she's likely acting without ulterior motive at the very least.
一体何の話してんだよ。
I've been suspicious. There's just questions about her that still are out there, aren't there? The others couldn't see the D sword. All I saw was Yuki and I freaking out.
私たちこの前南沢千里に襲われました。そして今日もこんなのもう我慢できない。だから
Wait. All we have is an hour. If you draw them and just be threatening for an hour, we're good, right? If these have to happen on the days of, we're good. Regardless of if it's her or someone else. And wait, weren't we attacked on a day, not a day of? Why would she be attacking today? There's just so many things that don't line up with the idea that she is with the serial killers and that they're not separate forces. Please come to that conclusion. Please. Arimura looked at the sword in her hands and cackled.
この手で事件を終わらせてやります。南沢千里を殺して。
No, that's not gonna help. Oh my goodness, come to just a sensible conclusion.
ちょっと待って。
Everyone turned to look at Kurisu. She probably knew what was, she was getting too emotional about the situation because she was hesitating more than I'd ever seen before.
あのね、千里が犯人って本当のことなの？
We know she's an arsonist. We don't know if she's killed anyone. We know she's probably perfectly willing to kill someone.
証拠はまだあの ID カードと僕らの証言しかない。
慰霊碑にはあの子の名前がちゃんとあるのよ。それは何かのミスじゃないですか。A1 東京総合病院のデータでは行方不明になっていたんですよね。
Yeah, this probably isn't the direction you want to go, Kurisu. Probably has more to... Again, it seems like the logical conclusion is that there are more than one groups acting here, and she, as another person, is following the trail of that.
けど、私見たんだもの。私の目の前で、千里は瓦礫に潰されて。
Oh? Oh. Has that come up before? She must have been remembering something painful. She put her hands to her chest, her nails dug in deep. But then Arimura raised her eyebrows so high that I could see it from here.
来る先輩。
This is important information. Why did you not tell us this earlier?
どうして嘘をつくんですか？
Okay, that's why.
え？
Oh, Kurisu, did he know her ability is a lie detector? Shocked, I glanced at them from one to the other. Actually, that is interesting. So if I'm suspicious of Arimura, again, like I said before, all she needs to do is just tell the truth constantly and place a well-placed lie here and there to motivate people to have... Because the best lie is something that's enshrouded within the truth, right? Where you don't have anything... you don't have a reason to question it because everything else that you've heard is like, yeah, that's true. Arimura was staring at Kurisu with suspicious eyes. But Kurisu's expression remained unchanged to the point where it almost seemed unnatural.
来る先輩の今の言葉は嘘です。
Then again, I could also see the motivation for Kurisu to lie, or at the very least, stretch the imagination of her truth. All she has to do is believe she's lying, right? Can she tell? She can't tell. Because I'm trying to remember the one thing when she was demonstrating her power before, when just like some random bullshit about Takuru's like random stuff, where he denied and was like, I'm trying to remember which way that went. Because is her power to tell the actual truth of the situation, or to be able to interpret if someone thinks they're lying? Could someone be so like brainwashed to the point of believing something that they told something and they believed it was the truth and she think it was the truth as a result of that? For example. In other words, Kurisu is absolutely lying right now. But Kurisu looked Arimura dead in the eye as she spoke.
嘘なんかじゃないわ。いいえ、先輩は南沢千里が死んだところを見ていません。
Did she see someone die that she thinks was probably her?
あなたの能力というのがどのくらい正確なのか私は知らない。けれど彼女はもうこの世にはいないわ。
Okay, I mean...
そう信じたいだけじゃないんですか？あるいは南沢千里が実は生きているのを知っているとか。
Yeah, that seems like the most likely explanation, but again, it's weird that she didn't bring it up to this point. That seems like a vital information, because she's been part of the discussions being like, maybe she's the killer. It feels like she would have brought this up ages ago. If Takeru goes and is like, okay, she said this before, then that would be good. But the fact that she hasn't brought it up makes me feel as though she's lying. That she hasn't brought it up because she doubts it. That she thought it might be her, but she was never 100% sure, and this coming up is just removed her ability to properly assume that who she saw die was actually her. The two of them glared at each other.
もし仮に。はい。
仮に千里が生き延びていたとしても、あの子に殺人なんてできるはずがない。
Cruz's voice took on a sorrowful note.
千里はとっても臆病な子だった。小さな虫を殺すこともできないくらい気が弱くて、何かあるとすぐに泣きべそをかいて、だからいつも誰かの後をついて回っていたわ。もちろん暴力なんて嫌いだったし、血を見るのすら苦手だった。そんな千里が猟奇殺人なんて、私にはどうしても納得がいかない。
Hence,
ありえないわ。
hence your insistence that she must have died and that it has to be someone else. Again, the serial killer we've seen, which I honestly don't see a reason to think it isn't her at this point, we don't know to have killed anyone. But again, she's sure shown the willingness to, so this argument sort of falls on deaf ears for me.
どうやら今度は本当のことを言っているようですね。
Right, she believes that to be the case, sincerely. So, okay, I think we can safely assume that Arimura's power is the ability to tell if a person thinks what they're saying is true. And if there are doubts there, and they're just sort of wanting something to be true, it'll come across as a lie, right?
だから
Cruz's voice was rarely this emotional, but she must have realized that nothing she said would matter, so she fell silent.
とにかく千里が犯人じゃないとしたら、タクルたちの憶測は完全に間違ってしまっているわ。真犯人が他にいたらどうする気なの？
それは。
Of course, I thought about that possibility. There might be multiple killers. And there might be another psychic working with Minamisawa Senri.
でも、だとしても、今日が終わるまでに誰も殺されなければ僕らの勝ち。
Oh, for fuck's sake, everyone leapt out of their chairs as we heard a scream from downstairs. Why is she downstairs? No, Yui. Oh, no, not Yuki. Yui. Yui! Oh, shit. Kirsty ran down the stairs. We followed right after her. I swear to goodness, this is like a spider or something. You had fallen backwards on the ground near the front desk. Her face was pale and her jaw was chattering.
お姉ちゃん、ね
え。ユイ、大丈夫か？ユイ。
You and Dad grabbed her and held her tight, but she's still shaking. Terror had completely consumed her.
何があったの？ユイ。しっかりしなさい。
Kirsty grabbed her by the cheeks and yelled.
私、寝ようと思って、父さんにお休みの挨拶して。
おやすみなさい。父さんも無理しないで、もう寝たら？
そう思うんだったらノノに意見しといてくれ。あいつのせいで余計な仕事が一つ増えたんだよ。
ナナ姉はタクル兄のことになると人がか？
違いねえな。じゃ、おやすみ。
おやすみ。
And then...
それで私部屋へ戻ろうとして。
Maybe she's psychic?
診察室を出たんだけど
If it's anything like what happened to Takaru, then that would imply that she's psychic too?
その時玄関のドアから音がノックの音が私旧館の人かなって思ってそれです
みません、今日の診察は終わりなんです。休館でしたら夜間診療のある病院をご紹介しますけど。どうなさいました？救急車呼んだ方がいいですか？
It doesn't seem to have the pattern at the moment.
一体何なんですか？いたずらならやめてください。
It might, though. It's hard to tell with them being so scattered.
だからやめてください。
No, that seems different.
私ものすごく怖くなって
What's the what's the sign of doom one? Was it? It was dun 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 dun, right? If I'm remembering correctly. And that was dun dun dun.
外を見たら
Okay, this is actually her. What happened to her? Did she run away? If she was really trying to kill us, she wouldn't be. She wouldn't be set off by just... Maybe she would be set off by young girls. Just, I don't know.
もう大丈夫よユイ
Kirsi rubbed her head gently. And at last the dam burst and Yui started to cry. Everyone looked at each other pale as we listened to her sob. Rimmer and I in particular had gone deathly white as Yui. Knocking. It was the same thing I heard at the cafe.
やっぱり追いかけてきたんだ。
No. There is literally no reason to believe that that was her. The knocking in the flashback. Describe the pattern of the knocking. She probably didn't. I can feel my knees shaking. I remember the knocking and dragging footsteps I heard at the cafe, and my heart began to feel overwhelmed with terror. There is just so much not supporting this conclusion, and they're just jumping to conclusions based on fear, basically. I felt an impulse to run screaming off into the night. But strangely enough, it was Arimura who gave in before I did. She grit her teeth so hard I could hear it from where I was standing that she ran towards the front entrance.
おい有村
Wait, let's ask why she didn't come in if she came here. If all she wanted to do was kill us, she just set the place on fire, right? She yanked open the lock on the door and then flung it open. She ran out on the street, flailing her D-sword.
南沢千里、私はここにいる。くだらない小細工なんかやめて、さっさと殺しに来いよ。
She kept swinging her D-sword at the shadows formed by the streetlights.
私はもう逃げも隠れもしない。殺せるもんなら殺してみろって言ってんだ。
やめろ有村何やってるんだよ
I grabbed Arimura from behind. She'd clearly gone insane. Her D-sword hadn't been rebooted yet, so it just slid right through me. If it had been, I wouldn't have survived.
やだ、離して。殺されるのは嫌。
Calm down.
落ち着けあいつは僕らがパニックになるのを狙ってるんだ冷静にならなきゃ負けだ
なんでこんな目に遭わなきゃならないの。能力なんてなければよかった。こんなものさえなければ。
Yeah, hers is definitely... The irony of her is that it's useful, but it's not so useful to her in a lot of cases. Like, how often is she just used as a tool? When I saw her, I realized I had been making a mistake. For a while now, I thought that I was starting to understand Arimura, but I was wrong. Bratty know-it-all. Normal girl who sometimes got excited and smiled a childlike smile. I was always surprised when she did, but I'd also told myself that was who she really was. But I was wrong. She was the weak little girl, whose fate was caught up in events far beyond her control.
そうだ。能力なんてなければ、誰もこんなことに巻き込まれることはなかった。
No one would have been killed, and no one would have been tortured in those experiments in that basement. I hated myself for ever being proud of my powers. Why did they even exist? Physics? Who gave me these and why? Well, who gave you your hair? Just happened, right? Harimaru's body was shaking as I held her. Pathetically enough, I was shaking every bit as much.
おい宮代有村
Ida ran up to us as we sat on the side of the road. Serka, Yuki, Kazuki ran after him.
大丈夫か
ああ、なんとか落ち着いた。
I lied. As not to worry them.
それより部屋へ戻ろう。ここにいたら危ない。いつ襲われるか。
And then Ito cut me off and showed me his phone. I flinched away.
まさか、また正体不明の電話がかかってきたのか。
Nope, it's probably the murder. Ito must have guessed what I was thinking, because he quickly shook his head.
違うよく見ろ宮代
I stared at the phone. It had the usual wallpaper, the usual apps. There was nothing out of the ordinary.
気がついたか
尾上、お前のも見せてくれ。
Or did the day pass? Did the day pass? Did someone die? Did someone find someone dead? Sarah took her phone out of her pocket and showed it to me. Showed the same thing that Ito's did. The present time and date. 12:03 a.m. October 24th. Yep. It was over.
助かったのか。
Questions, questions, questions. The fact that she showed up here is concerning, though. The fact that she opened the door and then apparently ran off. So there's two realistic explanations behind why she saw that. One, she showed up and then decided to run off for some reason. I assume because of a lack of killing intent. Or maybe she saw a scared little girl and was like too reminded of it herself and was like, fuck, I can't deal with that. Or two, Yui has psychic powers, at least to a minimum level. Minimum level enough to create that real boot. It does seem as though... It seems as though the other cases required them to be psychics, possibly because they're more sensitive. Technically, based on what we've discussed, it would be possible to do the same thing to someone who isn't psychic, but I don't know if there's limitations to that. Like, if you can only go so far realistically. And even then, I'm leaning to the idea that she actually showed up on the basis of they showed her in that flashback, and Yui hasn't seen her before. And based on what we saw in Takeru's, it seems likely that whatever they're doing in terms of the real booting needs to leverage some of their own internal knowledge in order to create the delusion, that sort of thing. And she hadn't seen that before. So I'm willing to bet that that was actually her that showed up, and the fact that she ran off probably indicates... I'm going to go with less killing intent than we're assuming right now. Again, she ran off before. Urimer swung her head around and yanked the phone out of Serka's hands. Her fingers were shaking too much to read what it said. She stared at it again and again, and then... The strength drained from her tiny body as she collapsed into me. And then she passed out. Oh boy. October 23rd, day of the return of the New Generation Madness. And we survived it. But who didn't? Is there not going to be a murder this time? Kasuki got into her usual gaming position and stretched. She was about to start playing ESO 2. I chuckled as I opened the lid of my lunchbox. Everything was returning to normal. Inside the lunchbox was a sandwich that Kurisu had made for me. Admittedly, I can get the appeal of just jumping into an MMO, because I've been playing a lot of FF14 since the new expansion came out, which might have maybe possibly left me not even considering playing this for like a couple weeks. Morning had come. It was a Saturday, but it was the one day of the month we went to school on weekends. We got in some sleep at Aoba dorm and then taken showers and come to school. You and Marisol had woken up and were staying at Aoba Clinic, but neither of them seemed hurt, and Kurisu and Yuki were staying home to take care of them. For my part, I'd skip out on morning classes to stop by the brain doctor that Dad had referred me to. The result had been the same as Dad had said, and no abnormalities in the blood vessels in my brain. When I told Kurisu over the phone, she sounded relieved.
さてと
I wasn't feeling hungry, but I didn't want the sandwich to go to waste. Took a little nibble of it and stared off at the board on the wall.
これで本当に終わったのかニュージェネの狂気の再来
You think they just haven't found a body? The net had been in an uproar last night. No, it still was, but not because something had happened. In fact, the uproar is because nothing had happened. Checked a bunch of different places, TV, radio, and even the newspaper. But nothing happened on the 23rd. That make you think the new of the New Generation Madness. There are all kinds of rumors going around on the net. Are we going to assume that the fact that we avoided it meant that we avoided it? I don't think so. It does feel as though Takeru was the target, though, right? Because he had that delusion. It does seem as though that was the case. There are all kinds of rumors going around on the net. This included a weird conspiracy theory that the killer had been captured, but because he was the son of a major politician, they couldn't go public with it. That sounds about right, in terms of internet conspiracies. But most people thought the return of the New Generation Madness was over now that nothing had happened on the 23rd. But the killer hasn't been arrested. Will killings continue? Well, here's the real question I think it really boils down to is why were they matching that pattern?
Oh, Miyashiro! 病院はもういいのか?
Oh, did I skip that by accident? Oh, maybe that was by Auto. Why were they trying to match that pattern in the first place? That's the real question. My main theories from before was 1, they're trying to replicate something previously. 2, they're trying to draw attention to it by that parallel. Especially if we're talking about, like, maybe creating a bunch of psychics. To look at the sumo stickers and stuff like that, right? If the idea is that they want to create a bunch... I guess here's still my sort of standing theory as to what they're trying to do. They want to create a bunch of psychics by drawing attention to the sumo stickers. So they kill people, not only to get rid of potential threats, but they kill them in this pattern to make a big publicity case out of it that can draw people's attention to those stickers and create a bunch of psychics, or at least low-level resonance that allow them to do something big, right? That let them spread their influence. The more people reboot it, especially if my concept about the reason they're targeting psychics is the idea that maybe they're more sensitive to it, they're more capable of making things into reality because of the nature of what they are. And that's why they're able to actually do the murders so over the top and whatnot. They're able to create those delusions when a normal person, they'd probably not be able to do that. Or at the very least, they'd need to kill them themselves rather than having the other person's delusions basically do the work for them. That in mind. Yeah, the idea that they wanted to match those dates on the basis of to make more of a spectacle out of it so more people would pay attention. So if nothing happened there, and it just meant they messed up in trying to kill Takeru, they could still do it on the next one and then reinvigorate the spectacle, right? So it shouldn't matter that they missed one as much as it being over, right?
ああ、おかげさまで異常なしだってさ。
よかったね。
Ida and Takeru are both carrying lunchboxes of their own. Kursu had made their lunches this morning, just like she made mine.
けど登校するなり部室に直行してランチとかいいゴミ分。
授業は午後からでいいって言われたからさ。それにマップを見ながらいろいろ考えてみようと思って。
これ以上何もするなって今朝新庄さんに言われたろ。
When we told Shinjo that there had been another attack by the person we believed to be Minamisawa Senri, he demanded to know why we hadn't told him sooner. Yeah, why didn't we have a police escort if we really wanted to stay safe? Unless we don't trust the police. And then he insisted that we never do anything so dangerous again. We just hung out, man. We were specifically trying to be safe.
でも考えるくらいならいいだろう。
I put the lid back in my lunch, having barely eaten any of it at all, and looked back at the map.
昨日僕たちはカフェラックスにいた。そこで事件が起こった。僕の前に現れたのは以前襲ってきたあの女だった。
Oh, do we get to choose? Definitely lab coat. Definitely. 100%. 100%. No, that's not right. No, we don't get a joke? Damn you, game.
僕の前に現れたのは以前襲ってきたあの女だった。
Whatever. I still am gonna be really annoyed every single time they speculate about stuff and don't
そしてその能力は
and don't question the fact that he just opened his eyes at a point and everything was back to normal. At all. Pyrokinetic. She didn't do pyrokinetic stuff, did she? Why throughout all of this, if she really just wanted to kill us, she didn't burn anything? You could say, oh, she has different powers and whatnot, but...
ところがカフェラックスで僕を襲ったのはパイロキネシスじゃなく別の能力だった。それは
showed me a delusion of being alone. Okay, we're gonna address that.
ってことはやっぱり南沢千里は一人で二つの能力を持ってるって推測が正しいのかな。
Well, based on what we have talked about, technically anyone could do that. Based on the concept as it has been described to us, anyone could technically do that. Anyone who has psychic powers.
いや、まだ確証は持てない。別の能力者が協力している可能性を否定できないし。
It does feel like they're really quick to throw them into categories of what their power is rather than saying like they're just particularly good at this element of a more general power.
それで襲われた時の緊張のせいでタクがまぶたの血管を切っちゃって結局。
ああ、僕はそこで父さんの診察を受けてその後みんなで23日が過ぎる。
そういえばさ、あの時副部長と有村なんか言い争いとかしての。
言い争い？
そういえば
I don't know why we're just summing up what we literally have just done. No. Yes. No. No. Okay, there we go. This is a little bit just like we literally just did this, sort of summarizing.
そうそう、のんちゃんがね、南沢千里さんは絶対に犯人じゃないって言ったんだよ。
猟奇殺人なんてできる子じゃないって言ってたな。昔親友だったからわかるって。
Well, traumatic events and many years can change a person, so I don't really buy that as an argument. That said, it is good to know that that's where she started. And if we're going to assume that she got to a point where she would be willing to kill someone, we could sort of try to speculate how she may have gone there. People don't do things for no reason. People don't just become irrational. There's some motivation, there's some elements or something they want, a goal to achieve via their actions.
でもさ、あの時に有村は副部長が嘘をついてるって指摘したんだよ。
確かあの時有村が嘘だと指摘したのは
No. Nope. That one. Okay. Just trying to be thorough to make sure I'm not, like, overlooking something.
思い出した。
きっとのんちゃんはね、親友だった子が。
まあ確かに副部長の気持ちになってみりゃな。
She might have just came up with a lie real quick. It doesn't really matter. I'm inclined to think that she probably saw someone die. That this is what I believe. I believe she saw someone die she thought was Minamisawa. It wasn't really her. She assumed it was. And she was never sure because of whatever various reason. And this all just basically confirmed to her that she was probably wrong about who that was that she saw. She probably saw people die in the earthquake. Seeing rubble fall on someone, especially because of the whole thing where she seemed like she was actually, you know, really uncomfortable thinking about the memory that she was bringing up.
そうだな。やっぱり南沢千里の話題はクリスがいるときは少し気を使った方がいいな。
I stuck a paper up on the board.
そして問題はその後か。
ああ。
アウバイーンの1階でユイが
ドアがノックされるのを聞いたんだよね。
It was the same thing I heard at Cafe Lax. That woman's knock. We didn't get a description of what the knock was like. It didn't sound like the knock in the thing. In the flashback. The fact that we got to hear it is such a big element that they probably didn't get any information on. And Yui had seen a terrifying sight.
僕でさえカフェであれだけ恐怖したんだ。何も知らないユイはさぞかし怖かっただろうな。
うん。かわいそう。
Fortunately, Yui didn't open the door. She quickly shut and locked it and saved us at the last minute. It was a glass door. You think that would have stopped? Do you have like bulletproof glass or something? I know she's a pyrokinetic and not like something that exerts like significant force to break a window, but if we're gonna assume she's the killer and she has other powers, but if she opened the door all the way,
いや待てよ。
I looked up from the map towards the ceiling. Something seemed very wrong.
お、どうしたのタク。
なんか思い出したのか。
Sarah and Ito looked at me, confused.
いやなんか引っかかった。ものすごく大変なことを見落としてる気がする。
Even Kazuki was surprised enough that she turned away from ESO2 to look at me.
大変なこと？
ああ、昨夜はいろんなことがあって有村がパニクったり僕も気が動転してて気づかなかったけど、
I'm imagining Arimura. No, sorry, yeah. Oh, I am actually blanking on her name. That's Kazuki. I'm imagining Kazuki over there, not playing Endwalker, but just in the queue to get into the game. And she's at like 1,000, which means she probably has like another hour before it. That's right. What was I just thinking now? If Yui had opened the door, she did open the door. I mean, if we look at that little indication, it sounded like she opened the door.
当然これまでの事件から考えればユイも被害者だ。それってつまり
I mean, are we saying that she's a psychic? Because that was one of the concepts, but that didn't seem as likely as the other one. I looked at the map again.
前にも話したけど、今回の事件には一つ明らかに共通する特徴があったよな。
っていうと？
それは被害者だ。最初の事件、こっちみんな。被害者とその特徴は、次は音漏れ炭。僕が目撃した回転で、そして学園祭で起きたごっつぁんです。そう。事件のターゲットになってる被害者は、全員能力者だ。だからこそ、僕や有村山沿いはずっと警戒していたわけだし、事実、カフェラックスでは僕がターゲットにされた。
No. You're going to assume that she's a psychic based on the idea that she was, aka the target? I don't buy that. I don't buy any of that, honestly. If we're saying that what she did at Cafe Lax was her doing that, why didn't she do that again? No one else saw her there, right? So it's not like she showed up. If she could just make people not realize she was there, she could have just knocked on the door, let it open, have Yui be confused, walk past her, then go up and attack one of you in the same way she did at the cafe, right? Right?
でも、アウバ寮に現れた南沢千里が襲撃しようとしたのは。
Whoa. Did she try to attack? I don't think we got so much information that she tried to attack. I just thought she freaked her out, and that caused her to slam the door shut and scream out, and then disappeared in some capacity that Yui wasn't really in the right state of mind to try to process. Attack, though? Did we get that information? I feel like we didn't get that information. I know he's a...
そう。ユイだ。
So what I think really happened was that Takeru was the target. Minamisawa Senri figured that out somehow, followed him, potentially, or found out where he was, in the same way she created arson cases after the fact of other killings and then showed up. I don't think she came to try to attack her. Probably. Did we ever get any knowledge about what places were arsoned in the area? Were they related to the people who died in any capacity? I still have been shocked. I think there's a way to test this at least.
まさか、そんな。
Show her the thing. Show her the thing. If she gets uncomfortable, take it away and never show it to her again.
ゆいちゃんもってこと？
マジかよ。
It's far too late to make a difference now, but I suddenly felt like a cold pillar of ice was pressed against my back. I was certain that Minamisawa Senri had come to Alba Clinic in search of me, Arimura, or Yuki. That Yui had only been caught up in all of it because she was unlucky enough to answer the door. Okay. Now we can see how far this goes back. Nope, not enough. Actually, yeah. This actually is enough. She can kill anyone. Let's go over it all again. Saying goodnight. Time for the door. Someone knocked. Offered help. Called an ambulance. What's this? I said stop please. I got really scared, but outside. Looked outside. And then you saw that. No, she gave very little information. We made a lot of assumptions. We made a lot of assumptions. We're making a lot of assumptions right now. But what if I was wrong? What if there's a reason she was after Yui? I sighed. It was hard for me to really believe.
これから確かめてくる。あいつが本当に能力者なのかどうか。
Yeah, I suppose we should. I suppose we should. I suppose we should. Okay, well, I'm gonna leave it there for this recording session. I'll be back in a hot second. So, see y'all then. Drive safely, everyone. That sounded weird as a way to start. Hello, welcome back. Let's just, as usual, try to get right back into it and keep progressing. So, Takeru has an idea that Yui is psychic, and I think that they're making a few assumptions to come to that conclusion. It'll be very interesting, because it's not necessarily like such a bad idea that we shouldn't explore it. We should be able to test it. Either with the sumo sticker, or I don't know, how developed as a psychic do you need to be in order to like see the swords and whatnot?
悪い。起こしちゃったな。
あれタクルに学校は
Nah, I don't really go there anymore.
早退した。お前のこと気になってさ。
またまた。
Yui slowly sat up from the bed and smiled a tired smile. Oh, this is an interesting thing to get a full CG art of. Oh, this cannot be insignificant. Huh. She must have felt dizzy for a moment because she leaned forward and grabbed her forehead. Her face was still pale, and the IV looked like it was painful.
いいからそのまま寝てろって。
でも
クレスに言いつけるぞ。
Those were always the best words to use on Yui. Especially because she knew that Kurisu was just basically her, right? She frowned for a second, but then laid down and pulled up the covers.
有村は
The other bed in the exam room was empty. Right, she fainted too.
お昼ごろ新庄さんって刑事さんが来て二人で出かけていった。
ふん。
Shinjo was probably asking her about last night.
あいつ、もう体は大丈夫なのか？
元気だったみたい。
そっか。
タクル兄にね、ありがとうって伝えてくれって。
え？
My eyes went wide as I looked at my foster sister. Arimura said thanks. Sorry, give me one sec. Something weird's happening. Okay, back. Sorry, some technical weirdness was happening. I wasn't sure if it was affecting the recording, so I was, just restarting that and confirming the previous stuff didn't die on me. Arimura said thanks.
何かの聞き間違いだろ。
そんなことないよ。いい人だよ、有村さん。タクル兄にもちゃんと感謝してると思うけど。
For what? I mean, what has actually been in my, like, what have I contributed outside of just, like, a different presence that has actually changed her situation in any capacity? Being a friend would probably be the extent of it, right? I guess some more info about what's going on is, I guess, yeah, info about what's going on. Even then, I think she was pretty... I guess it was an antagonistic force that was giving her information previously.
聞き間違いじゃなきゃ、ただの気の迷いだな。
I pulled a stool up to Yui's bed and sat down. And then I watched her. She lay under the covers. Might have been the first time I'd looked at her like this, come to think of it. Did she have some kind of power? It just seemed hard to believe. Maybe I was mistaken? I hoped I was. People were saying that the killings were over and that the return of the new generation madness was at its end. But the killer still hadn't been caught. The idea of the killer being after not just me, Arimura, and Yuki, but also Yui was too scary to contemplate.
何？どうしたの？
As I tried to figure out the best way to explain things, I heard a very uncomfortable voice. She must have noticed that I was staring at her silently. My sister was looking at me in confusion.
あのな、
あら、タクル。
Ooh, okay. So I guess we could test the sword thing since she seems to be able to take it out at will, right?
おかえりなさい。
まだお帰りなさいっていう時間じゃないでしょ。
Kirsu's standing at the door holding a tray with a bowl of rice porridge. Yuhi was next to her with a pair of spare pajamas. Kirsu put the tray next to the bed and looked at me, concerned.
学校早退したの？どこか具合でも？
ごめん、そうじゃなくて、ちょっと気になることがあってさ。
気になること？
Even if Yui was psychic, I still wasn't sure if I should tell Kirsu about that concept. She'd just worry more. But she cared about her sister, I knew that. It's probably better if she knew everything.
どうすれば確かめられるかな。
Then I remembered that method that Labcoat had used on me. I glanced at Yuki. She probably wouldn't like it, but it was the only way I could think of.
なあ、ユイ。ゆうべのことをあんまり思い出したくないと思うけどさ。有村とそこにいる山添が手に何か持っているのを見なかったか？
Kirsu and Yuki were shocked, too.
何か。
二人は剣のようなものを持っていたんじゃないか？
剣。
ねえ、タクル。あなた、何を言ってるの？
Kirsu grabbed me by the arm. She couldn't see the D-sword herself, but she knew exactly what I was asking.
ユイ、そんなの見てないわよね。
見てない。知らない。
Oh no, Kurisu, if you're gonna pressure her into answering in a certain way, that's not going to help. Yui must have been surprised by Kurisu's sudden outburst. It's obvious she was telling a lie. I could see from the look on her face that she thought that she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see.
山添、ごめん。お前が嫌なこと頼んでもいいか？もしもユイがそうなら、犯人が逮捕されるまで、お前や有村と同じように僕が守らないといけないから。
はい。
Yuki was surprised, but she seemed to be willing to help her old friend. She put the pajamas on the bed and stretched her hand out into empty air.
ゆいさん、見ていてね。
ウキちゃん、ダメ、やめて。
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, Kurisu, you're being fucking irrational. You can't just ignore reality if that is reality. You can't just say, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. She grabbed onto her as if she was trying to stop her from showing it to Yui.
ごめん。でも手遅れになってからじゃ遅いんだ。ほら、見えるだろ、ユイ。山添の手に何があるか。
Yuki slowly drew it out of thin air. As it shone with a light no normal person could see. It was the weapon that connected reality to the DRXC and its ocean negative energy, the D-sword. It was obvious that Yui's eyes were following Yuki's sword.
見えるの？ユイ。見えるの？
Yui looked like she was about to cry, then she nodded slowly.
山添、もういい。ありがとう。
Again, I think they're making, like, again, they came to this in a weird way that I think they made some, like, really bad assumptions. But yeah, it doesn't mean that she can't be. Honestly, I think it's more a question of how much... You know what I think this is more an indicator of? I think this is more an indicator of more and more people are potentially being impacted by this. Remember that big scene where you had a bunch of people at the grocery store with the mask on? That was forever ago. What's happening with that? There's nothing left but an awkward silence.
そんな
It is what it is. Genie can't be put back in the bottle. You take what the truth is and then you deal with it. I was right. Yui was a psychic. See, the conclusion I'd come to, well, at the very least, a speculation that would come to my mind as a result of this would be less so that she's another unique psychic, but more the idea that maybe there are, like, low-key psychics popping up everywhere by having the sumo stickers all around, being on the news and all that sort of fun stuff. And Minamisawa Senri had almost killed her last night. Assumption. We got very vague information from that still. October 24th, Saturday.
この匂いどこかで
That was the first thing Shinja thought as he talked into the crime scene tape and went inside the third floor condo. Oh, was there a killing? It just hasn't been made public. He knew the smell. From where?
そうだニューヨークで
When he was training in America, a local colleague had taken him into a cheap steakhouse. The waiter had brought him a disgusting grilled lamb steak. The smell was a mix of rotting animal blood and burnt fat. He hadn't even taken a single bite. That was precisely the smell that filled the room now. Lamb? I don't think I've even seen lamb as an American, grilled up and whatnot. We as Americans really like our beef. Cow is just the biggest thing on the menu. And that was precisely the smell that filled the room right now. Source of the stench is in the middle of the room, top of the dinner table. Okay, if this is a weird, unique smell, specific to say, what did he say it was, like animal fat and burnt? Or are you saying it's burnt meat? The forensic people must have finished their job, because it already had a sheet placed over it. Now it's just waiting to be carried out to the coroner. Shinja put his hands together for a moment in silent prayer, then flipped up the sheet. Second he saw it, he yanked the handkerchief out of his pocket and forced it into his mouth to stop him from throwing up. He knows disrespectful to the dead, but he couldn't help it.
ご苦労様です、新庄先輩。
He looked up and saw a younger detective talking to the forensics people. The detective lacked his usual energy. This probably wasn't the worst case he'd seen. Shinjo didn't want to look bad in front of the younger kid, so he forced the handkerchief away from his mouth.
ご苦労ガイシャの身元ははっきりしたかい
それがですね、衣服を着用していない上に遺体の損壊が激しくて、今のところ確実なのは10代から30代の女性ってことしか。
You can see hints of the charred flesh that indicated the body had once belonged to a woman. The face was so burnt there's no way to distinguish any features. And even stranger, there's what looked like a metal stick coming out of her mouth. Oh, like a shish kebab. Oh, that's fun. The rod came all the way out below her abdomen, like a skewer used to cook a kebab.
10日ほど前でしょうか。近くの工事現場から鉄筋が盗まれたっていう届けが出てるそうです。
The detective flipped open his notepad. Has this person been dead for a while?
鉄筋って言うとあれか
ええ。ガイシャの口から出てるのがそれの。
そういえば昔こんな映画があったな。
It was an old 80s horror flick that he'd seen with some friends in college. The movie was about a bunch of travelers who got lost in the jungle and eaten by cannibals. In one scene, someone had been cooked like this. And there was one more thing. This incident reminded him of a number of others he'd seen recently. The return of the new generation madness.
まさかこれも
Well, it actually would be perfectly fine if this person has been dead for a while, if all they want is the publicity of the situation, right? Could they have killed someone on the side and just like held them up somewhere. Like, okay, this person's just gonna stay there dead if we fuck up at any of these. This is gonna be our backup plan.
いや、でも23日は。
Right, but they didn't die today, presumably, right? Right? On October 23rd, the killer spent the whole day going after Miyashiro, Takeru, and his friends, which meant the target had to be one of them.
新庄さん？
悪い。続けてくれ。
Shinja put the sheet back on the body again and made another short prayer.
ガイシャの身元は未確認と言いましたが、自分の意見としては、おそらくこの部屋の住人と見て間違いないと思います。
Well, I assume we've combed over the idea of the owner and seen if there's any reason to think it doesn't match what we can make out about the victim.
灰田理子さんだったな。
はい。
He flipped through the notebook and relayed to Shinja what he learned from the condo's manager.
年齢18歳、独身で一人暮らし。職業は派遣のテレフォンサポートってことになってますが、派遣会社に確認を取ろうとしたところ、会社自体がもう存在していませんでした。
Interesting.
倒産したか、あるいは水商売のためのダミー会社って可能性もあるな。
その線については今表せてます。
で、会社が彼女だと思われる根拠は？
Shinja took out his notebook and started to copy down the things he thought were important.
はい。契約以来、どうも本人しかこの部屋へ入った形跡がないようなんです。
ん？
鑑識からの報告では、室内から出た指紋や足跡は本人とおぼしきものだけで、不自然に拭き取った跡なども見られません。
Right. But that would imply that while she would be the one dead, that no one else was here to do the killing, right? Which would imply that she cooked herself.
もちろん、それ以外の指紋もないわけじゃないんですが、どれも古いもので、おそらく以前の住人や業者だと思われます。鑑識も今回の件からは除外できるだろうという意見。また、玄関の靴跡も会社のものしか見当たりません。
What? Like, you mean footprints? Or like shoe prints or something like... Is that... Shoe marks feel like an odd thing to be able to identify to a person, I suppose.
遺体発見時、玄関には2つの鍵の他に、内側からチェーンロックがかかっていました。窓もしっかり施錠されていたので、本人に間違いないかと。
Shinja felt like he's going to faint.
じゃあ、犯人はどうやってここに入って犯行に及んだんだ？
It would take some serious equipment to roast a whole person. You couldn't get that in here without leaving any traces. True, even the idea of her just... roasting herself. Well, okay, the pyrokinetics back on the table is being suspicious, I suppose. Maybe when no one died, she went and killed someone herself? What would be the motivation in that case, though? Because I've been sort of seeing that trend of her going to the places after the fact and doing arson and whatnot. Well, if you go on the concept of her working with the others that are doing the murders, maybe the arson is more about distraction and getting rid of evidence than it is about anything like being on different sides and her going after them for revenge. Then again, from what little we saw of her, she didn't seem like she was in the right state of mind to really cooperate with people, so... part of the reason I've been assuming that she's been on the other side of them. The younger detective must have been thinking the same thing.
これで普通の死に方をしててくれれば、自殺ってことで新庄さんの手をお借りすることもなかったんですけど。
死に方に普通も何もないだろ
う。すいません。
1階のエントランスに防犯カメラがあったよな。
ええ、部下が管理人室で録画のチェックを始めていますが、今のところは何も。
そうか。
Shinja looked at the victim and then at the forensics people. They were frowning as they talked.
あの様子だと死亡時刻の推定もまだ無理そうだな。
はい、解剖に回してみないと何とも。 火災報知器が作動していればすぐに分かったんでしょうが。
Oh, does that just mean it's a slow roast without much smoke? The two of them looked up at the useless devices on the ceiling.
壊されていたって？
はい。
誰に？いや、室内には彼女の指紋しかないんだったな。ということは本人か。
But why would she do that? I wonder what sort of time frame you'd have for fingerprints to disappear naturally. Would they have to just be covered up, or do fingerprints persist for a long period of time? I imagine just like little particles in the air slowly filling in the gaps would probably at least dilute fingerprints after some point in time. Shinjo couldn't make any sense of it.
というか新庄さん、俺焼死の現場ってのは初めてなんですけど、こんな風に燃えるもんなんですか？
Is he?
わからん。こんなの俺だって初めてだ。
鑑識の連中がね、全員首をひねってるんです。
I mean,
どうやって燃えたかわからないって。
is there some unique element to the burning marks?
ガソリンや灯油を使ったってこんな風にはならないって。
And there's no smell of gasoline anyways. The only stench was of burning meat.
俺前にテレビで見たんですけど。
言えよ、最後まで。
怒りませんか？
内容による。
It does depend on that. But you know, every thought matters. You can dismiss it right away if it's not useful.
世界の心霊現象スペシャルとかいう番組だったかな。そこで人体の発火現象ってのが。
So the kebab is interesting. It does imply that there's some semblance of something happening. Oh, did we find any burn marks of other stuff? So if she burned, right? So okay, so there's a few ways this could have gone down, right? Someone else could have burned her. She could have burned herself, say the spontaneous human combustion thing. Let's say we have a situation where you have a bunch of psychics popping up all over the city, and some of them don't understand their power. Some of them accidentally just burn themselves to bits. Woo! I could imagine a situation where someone just like spontaneously human busts themselves out of pure just like not understanding what's happening and creates it by accident. If you just create a bunch of psychics that are capable of all this real booting stuff. Oh, but even with the real booting, doesn't that require other people? Oh my goodness. I guess so long as because you would still need to. I guess, did we find a sticker anywhere? Because again, the kebab implies that there had to be some other element to it. Because if it was just like one random person combusting in their apartment, one, we'd definitely find burn marks, which they haven't talked about it at all. If there was any semblance of a source of burning in the apartment, like burn marks on the ground or just like scorch marks like in the fucking oven or something, I don't know. But if it was that, then you wouldn't have the kebab element to it. You wouldn't have the rebar, which was a few days ago too, so obviously whatever was happening here was planned a while ago, at least.
やめろ、バカ。
Shinjo poked the younger detective's head lightly. The detective apologized, but Shinjo hadn't stopped him because it was too unbelievable to be true. He stopped him for the opposite reason. He was probably right. Which meant he didn't want rumors flying around, even inside the police department.
パイロキネシスと言ったな。
Lab Goat, Arimura, and Takaru had all used the word repeatedly. It was the power to set things on fire with your mind. They said the woman that was after Miyashiro and his friends, Minamisawa Senri, had it. Was this Haina Riko woman attacked by a pyrokinetic then? He came back to the same conclusion he'd reached earlier, but soon shook his head.
それでも説明できないか。
No, it doesn't. Because if someone attacked her, she would have presumably resisted, and there would at least be burn marks somewhere, right? So the implication would be if she was attacked somewhere else, then brought back here, which we don't have any evidence of someone else being here, which is the big part of it. So the only possible explanation is that she did it to herself through the same methodology we've seen in the other ones, right? How'd she get the rebar used to skewer the woman inside the room, and how'd she get it skewered? Shindo looked at the large window that dominated the room's east side. The curtain was open, and he could see the chaotic city of Shibuya outside. If the building was taller, the view would be impressive. But from this height, you could see the dirty backsides of the surrounding condos and multi-purpose buildings. It's hard to call it a nice view. Probably need the rent a lot cheaper though, he thought to himself as he began to examine the glass window. If the killer had used some kind of power to get the rebar in from the building across the street, the window would have been shattered. In terms of, not entering, you mean? Like, Takeru's ability to move shit? But there wasn't a scratch on it.
こいつは俺が一人で考えてもどうにもならないな。
He had to say it, but he needed a specialist like Lab Goat. For now, he decided to focus on gathering information.
新庄さん
A light tap on his back brought him back to reality.
防犯カメラをチェックしてた部下から連絡です。ガイシャの顔がはっきり映ってる映像を見つけました。
そうか、行こう。
If it's not this person. When he finally got out of the room, he felt like he could breathe again. Disrespectful to the dead or not, he took a deep breath when he got outside. He went down to the first floor and looked at the video on the monitor of the manager's room.
管理人の話だと、ハイダリコさんは必ずカメラから顔を背ける。
取られたくない理由でも？
渋谷地震の時に顔に火傷を負ったとかで、人に見られるのを極端に嫌ってたらしいですね。
Okay. That would add up with the concept that maybe she was... Ooh. I mean, is there the possibility that this straight up is... that this actually is her? Her face got burned during it. She hated people saying... I mean, so if we're gonna go on the concept that some semblance of their mind and their focus and their trauma and whatnot is the basis for what their specialty of power is, that would add up as her, the person in question, being that.
ああ、それで。
ただこの時は一瞬ですが偶然映ってしまったようです。
The timestamp on the screen indicated it was late at night on the 12th of October.
10月12日？それって確か。
He remembered writing that day down, so he flipped open his notebook. Is that like the day they got attacked?
ああ、そうだ。宮代君たちが初めて南沢千里に襲われたっていう夜だな。
先輩、ハイダリコさん来ました。
Oh, it's totally gonna end up being her, isn't it? He quickly turned his eye back to the screen. Yep. In the video, the door to the entrance opened and the woman came staggering inside. Perhaps her leg didn't work right, or maybe she was injured because he could tell she was dragging it. With the rebar, even. Her hair covered her face, making it impossible to read her expression.
おい、あれって。
ええ。
So let's say she died. Are we going to say she died on the 23rd? She got the rebarb and did this all to herself? Oh my goodness, fuck, maybe she attacked Takeru because she was under some semblance of delusion in the same capacity as the other people even. Maybe she's being, like... maybe she's being just, like, pulled around and used as, like, a puppet. By, like, delusions and shit. Shouldn't the other detective gasped? Haruhiko was holding a long object in her hands, something like a staff, and using it to support herself. It looked exactly like the iron rebar that was currently skewing her body.
まさか、自分で持ち込んだ鉄筋で串刺しに?
It was just a recording, but Shinjo found himself holding his breath nervously, as if he was watching live footage. She walked right by the security camera. It did seem like she wanted to avoid showing her face. But she must have tripped on something when she was right under the camera, because she staggered. But when she did, her hair flew backward, and he could finally get a glimpse of her face. Jun's eyes went wide.
似てる。
So the real mystery that this poses is what happened. So we probably know what happened with Taku, right? It was a delusion created using these memories of the person. But Yui, her being a psychic means that it's possible for whoever the killer was to explicitly try to do the same thing to her, right? But she shouldn't know what she looks like. She shouldn't know what the knock sounds like. So if we're saying the knock was wrong in the flashback because she didn't know what the pattern was, she also shouldn't have seen her clearly, right? We shouldn't have seen that in the flashback and how it was represented. Which is the big part of why I thought it was like a real thing rather than like being like a psychic delusion, right? Because she shouldn't know what she looks like. Yui hasn't been involved in those conversations as far as I'm aware. All of her features match the description. They are identical to the composite sketch based on a description by someone who had barely survived an attack by this woman.
そんなこいつ
The girl in the video was.
大丈夫よユイ。安全になるまでずっと一緒にいてあげるから。
Oh, she does not look pleased with that. Or she's neutral. It's hard to tell. Emotionless. Oh my goodness. Okay, so... I guess the question is still, how recently did she die? The 12th was when it was attacked. When they were attacked. She must have died much more recently than that, though, because they did have an encounter with her not that long ago with the cops, right? Like, how fucking long ago would have it been? Fuck, maybe they've been, like, pulling her around as, like, a puppet, and when they didn't get their target for either then they decided to just go through with that. They just decided, like, we've already got this person under control. We can force her into committing suicide, basically, with her powers. We need someone to die. Go die. Which then does pose the question as to if they really need someone to die every time. If they're just looking for the publicity, they can manipulate that. Right? Then again, if they had something immediately available after failing, then it probably would be easier to just say, yeah, let's just do it real quick. Rather than just being like assuming that you might be able to get back to the level of publicity that you were trying to get to the next time by just having it happen again and people being like, oh no, it's back. That sort of thing.
ほら、元気出して。
You nodded. She was still pale. Not only had she gone through a lot last night, but she just found out that she was a psychic. She wasn't looking good at all. I explained to her what I thought she needed to know and then told her that no matter what, she must never be alone from now on. It's true that the return of the new generation madness had come to a temporary halt from when Minamisawa Senri hadn't been able to kill anyone on the 23rd. But no matter what the rest of the world said, it felt far too early to declare this whole thing over.
でもね、こんな時にこんなことを言うのは。え？ユイと一緒にお風呂に入ったり寝たりするの久しぶりなんだもの。ユイったらいつの間にか大人になっちゃって、すっかりユウとのお姉ちゃんになっちゃったでしょ。たまには私の妹に戻って甘えてくれてもいいのになんて思ってたから。
やだもう。
You smile just a little. Silver linings, yeah?
ユウとはどうするって？
父さんの部屋にしばらく居候。
この部屋で一緒に寝ていいって言ったんだけどね。なんか恥ずかしいみたい。私は。
ユウはのの姉が初恋の人だから。あ、これ内緒ね。絶対ね。
Yeah, that feels like a kid.
それは光栄だわ。ねえねえタクル、頑張らないとユウトに私を取られちゃうわよ。
Yeah, no. No, you're his sister, you're my sister if I'm placing myself in his shoes. I don't want that to happen. Sometimes Kiryu would say things like that, just to enjoy my reaction. Lately, I got a lot better at not reacting the way she wanted me to. I simply snorted. She puffed up her cheeks a little and pouted.
で、ユイの能力なんだけど、本当に自覚とかないのか？
The small smile vanished from Yui's face.
そんなの急に言われても。
自分の身の回りで特別なことが起こったりとかさ。
特別って言うとユウのことくらいかな。
どんな？
ユウが嘘ついてもすぐにわかるとか。
Ooh. Da, 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 da.
それは超能力じゃないわね。お姉ちゃんなら普通よ。私だってタクルのついた嘘なんて簡単に見抜けるもの。
No, you can't. It is an interesting discussion point, though. Is it more than just him?
だからそこで僕を引き合いに出すなよ。
This time, my don't react skill failed me. Kiryu chuckled, finally satisfied. Damn it. Felt annoyed for a moment, then I realized that Kiryu was trying to send me a message.
なるべくユイを怖がらせないであげて。
That's what she seemed to be saying. Yeah, she was right. A normal girl like Yui would never be able to handle knowing there might be a serial killer after her. So, Kiryu was deliberately pretending to be cheerful.
と
I realized that my tone had probably been too harsh and relaxed in.
他にはないかな。どんなことでもいいんだけど。
他に？
Yui looked down and thought for a minute.
そういえば本当に時々だけどユウの声が聞こえるような気がする。
声？
うん。例えばユウが忘れ物をして困ってたり怪我をして泣いてたり、そういう良くない声が聞こえてきて。
So, like a direct link of being able to protect him?
それで急いでユウの学校へ行くと本当に怪我をしてたりするの。
Like a one-to-one telepathy?
なるほど。それかもしれない。
It could just be telepathy and, like, in general, and she's hyper-focused on one person. I wasn't a specialist, but, so I couldn't say for sure. But maybe you could call it psychic sympathy between siblings. Okay. Never heard of that concept before. Labcoat might know more, but for whatever reason, she had it out for us. There's no way I was telling her about Yui.
ユウトにはそういうことはないのかしら。
大丈夫。あいつに能力はない。
I'd already checked yesterday. I'd shown him Yamazoe's D-sword and he hadn't shown any response at all.
なんだか私はユウの心配してるのにユウの方はそうでもないみたいでちょっと癪だけど。
You know, it just means he trusts you. He trusts you to take care of yourself because you're so responsible.
でもいいよね。ユウが狙われることはないんだもんね。
ああ、あいつはターゲットにされないはずだ。
I mean, in terms of how it manifests in a person, and in terms of her priorities, that undoubtedly is just a positive thing at this point. It's gonna get real freaking awkward when they get into their teen years and adult years, and she's starting to feel things like he can't perform in bed or something like that. That's gonna be real fucking awkward. Oh no, he's in trouble. I better bring him his Viagra. Oh. Oh. When Yui heard that, she finally seemed to feel a bit better. Kiryu softly put her hand on Yui's head and rubbed it. Was that a new expression for her?
本当にいい子ね、ユイは。
やだ、やめてよ。
ダメです。
Kirsten grabbed Yui before she could escape and held her tight. She looked like she was about to kiss her at any second.
ゆい好きよ、大好き。うわ、ののねがなんか気持ち悪い。助けてタクルに。
No, 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 no. I might get pulled into it if I did that. I couldn't help but smile.
気が済むまでやらせてやれよユイ。
やだ、助けてよ。
Just when I thought it was safe to leave Yui with Kurisu. It was a normal knock. It wasn't the dun 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 dun. Come on. There's a pattern to it. Have we not realized that? Or the three of us froze at the sudden sound of a knock.
まさかここ家の中だぞ。
Yeah, that didn't really stop anything before. Still. It was just a knock. I assume someone's at the door. Knock continued. Okay, let's just step back between this, like, false terror. Yep, there it is.
Huh?
Yep, there it is. Maybe they're just not used to knocking in the house because they don't normally have guests and everyone's used to just, like, opening doors and shit. Suddenly I heard an easygoing voice from the other side of the door.
宮代先輩、ちょっといいっすか？それともクルス先輩となんかまずいことでもしてますか？
We have a child in here. Of course we're not.
ってお前かよ。
あ、
どうもじゃない。紛らわしいからノックすんなよ。
そういうわけにはいきませんってば。変な場面とか見ちゃったらどうするんです？
僕とクルスで変な場面なんてないからな。で、なんか用か？
あ、はい。ちょっと宮代先輩に話があるんで、いいですか？
僕に？
ダイニングに来てもらっても。
なあ、構わないけど。
私たちも行った方がいいかしら。
Kirisa poked her face out from behind me and asked. Arimura stuck her hands out and shook them, what looked to me like a deliberate overreaction.
いえいえ、クルス先輩と立花姉はそのままラブラブしててオッケーっすよ。そう？
Arimura said her usual adios gracias to a confused Kirisu, then dragged me out of the room.
なんだよ一体。
Okay, so are we going to get information through her because Mr. Detective Man uses her like a tool?
クルス先輩にはまだちょっとな話なんで。とにかく来てください。見てほしいものが。
Oh, they're going to learn that she died and they're going to be like, oh my goodness, that's why there wasn't a death on the 23rd, because she's dead and she's the killer and we're all going to feel safe. And then we're going to realize there's got to be a point where we realize it's definitely not her. I followed Arimura as she hurried away from Kursa's room.
あ、タク、ゆいちゃんどう？
うん、もう大丈夫だと思う。落ち着いたよ。
そっか、よかったね。
Oh, right, yeah, and the detective man did come and pick her up to use her like a tool, so... I assume that all happened after the previous scene that we saw with Mr. Detective Man, which I'm not remembering his name. Was it Shinjo? It might be Shinjo. Yuki was in the kitchen washing dishes. She looked at us. She let out a small sigh of relief. Even she hadn't seen her for a long time, Yui's still her friend, and she was still worried about her.
ひなちゃん、お茶飲む？ウキちゃんが入れてくれたのはとっても美味しいよ。
ああ、いえ、私はそろそろ家に帰ろうと。
I turned to look at Arimura, surprised. I thought she was staying here because there might be another attack like before and last night.
ひなちゃん帰っちゃうの？もっと合宿していこうよ。明日学校お休みだし。
いやいや、宮代先輩のお父様にこれ以上ご迷惑をおかけするわけには。っていうか、ぶっちゃけこんなに泊まり込むと思ってなかったんで、下着の替えとかピンチでして。
そんな、別に遠慮しなくても。
I mean, we do have plenty of girls in the house. It's not like there is a lack of potential options. And there's also probably a washing machine.
おっとド変態め、限界を突破した下着を遠慮なく見せつけていいと？いや、むしろじっくり見せろと？
No, no,
誰
no.
がそんなこと要求するか、そういう話じゃないだろ。
That's
じゃあ何ですか？
as way too played out and long for the joke they wanted to do there.
だから事件が終わったっていう確証が得られるまで有村もここにいないか、その方が安全。
ああ、なるほど。
Arimura scratched her cheek, and then she took a more serious look.
セリ、ウキ、悪いんだけど、ちょっとだけ外してくれないかな。
She spoke pointedly at Sarika and Yuki. The two of them exchanged glances for a moment, but Arimura wasn't allowing any room for discussion. They left the room.
はあ。
Once they were alone, Arimura sighed a little and took her phone out of her pocket.
宮代先輩に話っていうのは。
え？
つい今しがた、新庄さんからメールが来まして、私と先輩に大至急確認してほしいことがあるって。
So, what did you leave to do before?
新庄さんから？
すごく嫌なものを送りつけられました。デリカシーがないんでしょうね。大嫌いです、あの人。
Arimura expanded the attached image and looked away from the phone as she handed it to me.
それ、防犯カメラの映像のコピーだそうですよ。
I could see in the video the face of a woman I would never forget.
南沢千里。
My reaction was the opposite of Arimura's. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it.
間違いないですよね。じゃあ、新庄さんには先輩からそう言っといてください。私。
ああ、わかった。これどこなんだろう。
Arimura seemed annoyed.
その女のマンションとかメールには書いてありましたけど。
マンションを見つけた？じゃあ南沢千里は逮捕されたのか？
I finally managed to tear myself away from the screen and look at Arimura. She shrugged a little.
ま、似たようなものです。だから私は家に帰っても平気になりました。お世話になりました、先輩。ウキも立花姉も、もう安心していいみたいですよ。
どういうことだ？
死にました、その女。
は？
Arimura smoked without any real emotion in her voice.
死んだ？南？
ええ。クルス先輩にはうまく伝えてください。私、そういうの苦手なんで。それじゃ、そういうことで、あとはよろしくです。
She grabbed the phone from my hand and quickly deleted the photo. Then she bowed and left me alone in the dining room.
セリー、ウキ、話終わったよ。私帰るから、宮代先輩の相手してあげて。寂しがってるよ。
Yeah, that sounds about right. I could hear her voice in the hallway. I could also hear Sarika, Yuki, Kurisu, and Yui all talking. They're probably all saying something like, "You're leaving at this hour?" But I didn't hear the conversation at all.
南沢千里が死んだ？
The serial killer who's after us was gone. October 27th. Oh my goodness. Okay, well. Probably makes for a fairly good place to end this recording session, at least. Oh my goodness. Impressive. Very, very impressive. How, she dies and we still can't put it together that she's not the killer. Oh, okay, whatever. We gotta figure it out at some point. This is frustrating. This is legitimately a little frustrating that we're still on the point of thinking she's the killer. Or, you know, not even thinking she's the killer. Thinking she's the killer rather than thinking maybe she's the killer, and then also entertaining other options. We're just like assuming she's the killer, like everyone is at this point. Everyone except Kurusu, sort of, who seems like she does sort of assume that. She just doesn't want it to be true. Okay, well, I'll leave it there for now, and I'll be back in a little bit. Till then, drive safely, everyone. And hello, and welcome back. Let's just get into it. This will probably be the last time I'll be able to record before the end of the year, so let's go. Haida Riko's condo was cut off from the sunlight by the surrounding buildings, making the whole place feel somehow gloomy. So I am definitely interested in if they have records on this person. The whole assumption that she's Minami Sawa is something that we're sort of assuming. That doesn't need to be the case. It could be. Like, there's a fairly high probability it probably is. But I am interested in if they can find anything about a history of this Haida Riko. Lab Coat was standing there, her eyes as cold as ever. She'd gone through all the wooden shelves and colored boxes on the walls, read every last document and receipt inside, and found nothing.
警察が持っていったものの中には本当に何もなかったんだな。
ああ、俺が全部チェックしたんだ。間違いない。
Several days had passed since the death of the woman they believed to be Minamisawa Senri. The body had long since been taken out for an autopsy. A few pieces of evidence, like the table the body had been found on, had been taken by the police, but Shinjo said the clue she was looking for wasn't among them.
何も出てこない。無駄足だったのか。
She spent 2 hours searching the room. Even she was starting to feel a little concerned, but she shook her head to drive the thoughts from her mind. Next, she pulled out the magazines and comics from the shelves, began to check if anything was hidden between the pages.
なあ。
なんだ。
Shinjo was leaning up against the wall and watching her, a frown on his face.
この部屋は完全な密室だった。彼女以外誰も出入りした痕跡がなく、凶器の鉄筋も彼女自身が持ち込んだものだ。
それがどうした？
I mean, they've probably already concluded the idea that, Oh, are they looking for the sticker, maybe? Is that what she's looking for, maybe?
「彼女はどうやって死んだんだろうな。自殺か他殺かも含めて。
私は探偵じゃない。密室犯罪のトリックなど知るか。
そういう話をしてるわけじゃない。ギガロマニアックスの死に関して君の意見を求めてるんだ。
Shinjo sounded unhappy as he turned to look at the spot where the burnt body had been found.
ギガロマニアックスはいわゆる超能力者とは違う。他人と妄想を共有することで初めて能力が発現する。
Right, which is why I feel as though the, Oh, that reminds me about something I think someone brought up in the comments that was like a sort of what the fuck when I read it. Someone said that the blinking element of that one video that we saw online of the sumo sticker's perspective on like the first murder that we came across was supposed to be that reporter guy using his like visual psychic powers. I have seen... I don't think they've mentioned anything like that in this to confirm that as a concept. 1. 2, that doesn't even really make that much sense, because it wasn't something he was using for his fucking, like, career at that point, right? Plus, did he have the ability to make videos? We never saw anything to corroborate that concept. I just forgot, someone mentioned this in the comments at some point, and my reaction to that, just back at the time, was like, I don't think anything corroborates what you're saying, and it doesn't even sort of make sense. Like, you're like saying something that doesn't necessarily even make sense to my understanding of the story so far, and I'm almost sure they haven't said anything to say that was him. But going back to the idea that these sumo stickers, in some capacity, are capable of being used as a way to... Oh, okay, so, we have seen Takeru by himself with the sticker that seemed to make him uncomfortable at the very least. Was it creating a situation where he was capable of... What's the best way to phrase it? Doing psychic stuff? I don't know. But it does seem to do something to the powers at the very least, right? So if... Let's say someone's on the other side, maybe, and like constantly like making people feel shit by being the other observer or something like that. Or maybe it's some big supernatural thing where it's like a god or something. And that god is the other observer in this case, or something like that. Don't know. I do feel as though those are important for the methodology and how they're getting people to commit suicide.
つまりここが誰の目も届かない閉鎖空間だったのなら南沢千里はただの人間と同じだ。パイロキネシスなど使えるはずがない。だがここは閉鎖空間とは違う。例えば窓の外から誰かが覗いていれば妄想の共有など簡単にできる。
いや、そこまでは俺も考えたさ。
なら何を悩むことがある。ここもダメか。
Lapcoat finished checking all the bookshelves and looked around the room, uncertain of what to do next. There was a lot of furniture or appliances. The place was rather plain. The closet and desk were the first places she'd check, but she hadn't found what she was looking for. My best guess is still the, Suma sticker?
ここに住んでいたのが南沢千里なら例の委員会につながるヒントくらい出てくると思ったんだが、あるいは奴らのことだ。私より先にすでに回収済みということか。くそ、だいたい事件の発生から時間が経ちすぎだ。直後にここを調べられたら連中を出し抜けたかもしれないのに。
She looked over her shoulder and glared at Shinjo. It took effort to stop herself from bitching him out. Oh, she's trying to not do that? Oh. I don't believe that.
上等だ。絶対に突き止めてやる。
Lapcoat decided to search the whole room once more. All the paperwork inside the messy desk used the name Haida Riko. There's nothing but receipts and utility bills. But there's no sign of a bill for a phone or internet service. She had neither, it seemed. There's no sign of her even having a landline phone.
確かに。電話がどこにもないの。
She looked around the room and found the phone jack, but it was covered in dust and showed no signs of having ever been used. The only other things she found among the papers were receipts for food and a drink from a convenience store. Minamisawa Senri had never cooked. Convenience store food was all she ate. With what money?
これじゃあ食費もバカにならなかったろ。
Yeah, fast food adds up a lot. Like, even, like, unhealthy, cheap food is still typically a lot less expensive than trying to get by in fast food. It depends how much you're eating, but that should be relative too. How'd she paid for it all? The police were trying their hardest to find out. There's no sign of a bank book or credit card in the room. They didn't know anything about her bank account either.
金の出所は委員会じゃないのか。せめて口座番号だけでも分かれば尻尾がつかめるもの。
Committee? Well, that's something I don't think's been brought up before. This feels important.
南沢千里は23日の深夜から24日の未明にかけて宮代くんたちの前に姿を現してる。
So maybe... Actually, committee, it could just be some Japanese, like, local government thing, too. I could be wrong about that. Like, she could have been getting, like, out of unemployment stuff or something like that. I don't know.
そして 焼死体となって発見されたのはその24日の夜だ。ということは彼女が死んだのはその間ということになる。
Also worth noting is the idea that with her situation with her leg especially, the scar is hideable. But with the situation on her leg especially, it's hard to believe that she could like hold a proper job. I'm sure there would be places that would be capable of working with her and whatnot, and she'd be capable of working. But with nothing really being able to trace her to like government assisted stuff, it feels like you'd have a harder time dealing with like the programs and other things that are meant to like take handicapped people and try to make it so that they're capable of, you know, providing for themselves. In a world that's not really set up for them to work in as efficiently, it feels like that would be difficult in its own right. Lapcoat had been so lost in thought that she hadn't even realized that Shindo was talking to her. Huh.
あ？なんだ？
南沢千里が最後に目撃されてから死体が発見されるまでに20時間ほどあるって話だよ。
それだけあれば十分だろ。
ところがその20時間の間に何が起こったのか、いやそもそも南沢千里が何をしていたのか足取りが全くつかめないんだ。彼女はこのマンションにすら戻ってきていないんだよ。
何？
I mean, that seems pretty significant. I'm guessing she's been dead here for a while, and this is going to bring us to the conclusion that that wasn't actually her. Lapcoat's expression changed for the first time.
24日の防犯カメラに映ってないんだ。一度も。
Yeah, how did she get here then?
そんなバカな話があるか。じゃあどうやってここで死んだんだ？
だからこうして途方に暮れてる。
映像をチェックしたやつの見落としだろう。
俺も確認したよ。見落としはない。
Shinjo closed his eyes and rubbed them. He caused himself a good bit of eye strain. I can imagine. So is there any chance that maybe there's missing footage?
今映像を確認させてるが、どういうことかさっぱりだ。
わかった。少し考えてみよ
う。助かる。
He covered his face with his left hand, exhausted.
それも含めて、私はもう少しこの部屋を調査させてもらう。あんたは南沢千里がいつどうやってハイダリコという偽の身元を手に入れた、もしかするとそれにも委員会が絡んでいるかもしれない。
Okay, I'm thinking it's less likely to be a government thing.
それはもうやってる。
あとこの件の警察発表はいつになる予定だ？
Well, until they have reason to think it's connected to the other stuff.
まだ決まってない。いろいろ揉めてるらしい。
ニュースになればもっと南沢千里の情報が集まってくると思うんだがな。
気持ちはわかるが、そう焦るなよ。
Yeah, she's done that before, trying to crowdsource information because she can't find shit.
わかる？私の何がわかると言うんだ？
Yeah, you're ornery. We know. She glared at him with daggers in her eyes, but Shinjo shrugged and said nothing. Labcoat feels like...
さてと、ちょっと飯でも食ってくる。君はどうする？
Labcoat feels like the sort of person who sort of lives in the past. Whatever's making her mad is obviously something that happened. But she feels like the sort of person who lives in the past and has trouble seeing the future in any capacity, or even trying to like speculate on the future.
いらない。
じゃ、そうさせてもらう。
Shinjo left without trying to invite her a second time. But as he opened the door, he paused as if he'd remembered something.
どれだけ調べてくれても構わないが、マンションの管理人が君を疑ってる。本当に警察の関係者かって。所轄に問い合わせでもされたら厄介だから気をつけろよ。
一応気には留めておく。
一応じゃ困る。怒られるのは俺だ。
And then he laughed, but there's no humor in his voice. Ha 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 ha. Oh boy. Fantastic. Let me go do something real quick. No, it is not what you're thinking. No, it doesn't require me leaving my seat. And yes, I only need one hand to do it, but it's not what you're thinking. It isn't. Probably. Okay, finish with that. Sorry, some stuff was building up for a while and I just needed to, get that off my chest. It's all completed now. Don't need to worry about it. Let's go. Oh, shoot. I gotta do it again. No. It was after school in the club room and the twilight streamed in through the open windows. Kasugi was in the corner playing ESO2 and making weird noises. Yes, she was ERPing. Her battle didn't seem to be going well. Sorry, I was about to say her brain didn't seem to be going well. But she was making oddly sexy noises. Yep, no one outside the room got the wrong idea. I heard a small knock on the door.
ってお前もか。こそこそ覗いてないでさっさと入ってこいって。
大丈夫？お邪魔じゃない？
だから何がお邪魔なんだよ。
廊下の向こうまで聞こえてるよ、花ちゃん。
Not unless the walls are fucking thin as paper. My goodness.
今忙しいから話しかけるなってさ。
たくすごいね。花ちゃん検定があればすぐに1級とか取れるね。
そんなもんいらん。
私のことなんてどうでもいいのねって怒ってるぞ。
違う。私のこと勝手に話題にすんなだ。
すごいすごい。
Zerika smiled and collab. For some reason, she was really happy.
あれ、今日なんちゃんは？
生徒会。しばらく休んでたから仕事が溜まってるらしい。
川原のやつが来て、今日は新聞部には渡さないとさ。
おお、これは争奪戦だね。よーし、タク、のんちゃんを奪いに行こう。
Is this how it was like before everything started?
いや、いいよ。
I didn't want any more trouble with the student council. Or Hara, more specifically.
うわぁ、久しぶりにダメなタクに戻った。せっかくかっこよかったのに。
Yeah, I know. He never really... the loser talking never really left. Let's just say that.
なんだそれ。
だって、あんな怖い能力を使う人と対決したり、病院の地下へ潜入したり、とにかく事件を追ってるタクはかっこよかったよ。
そうか。
Kurusu got super mad at me and told me not to go chasing after dangerous. But now that all seemed like the distant past. Yeah, that's not gonna hold up. Even though it hadn't been even a week.
本当に事件はもう終わったんだよ。
That night, the 23rd, when there had been no murder, the rest of the world started to declare that the return of the new generation madness was over. But I still hadn't believed it then. I thought that it wasn't over at all. But the next day, I heard the shocking news from Shinjo. Namisawa Senri, the woman who threatened us so much, was found burnt to death in her condo.
センリが。
Yeah, you sort of can't not tell her.
僕も有村も映像を確認した。間違いない。
I spent a long time thinking that night. But in the end, I had no choice but to tell Kurusu about her death. When I told her, her eyes went wide and then she looked down, silently. Her long hair hid her face, so I couldn't see her expression. Well, imagine having a close friend die twice in your life. Is the second one worse because of the hope, or is it better because you've already dealt with it once and you don't need to process it as much? Don't know. I don't think many people could tell you.
なんて言っていいかわからないけど。
これでこれで終わったのね。もうタクルやユイを襲うような犯人はいなくなったのね。
There we go. She wants to believe it's not really her. So she doesn't have to believe that she was after the people that she cared for. Okay, yeah, that's one way to cope with it.
だと思うって新庄さんは。
そう。よかった。
She raised her head and her eyes were a little wet, but she was quietly smiling. The police still hadn't made any announcement about a suspect in the killings being burnt to death. Not only was Minamisawa Senri a minor, but she may have been driven to the crime by Chaos Child Syndrome, the form of PTSD experienced by young survivors of the Shibuya Earthquake. Yeah, we really haven't gone into that much, have we? We haven't. Shijo had said it was extremely delicate matter. And since the circumstances of her death were so strange, the forensic people were getting nowhere. There's an integral war over how the police should release the information.
あと、これは邪推かもしれないけど。
It seemed to me that the fact that she was a human test subject at AH Tokyo General might have played a role too. If she became famous, the media and internet might start looking into her past. And they might find out about the human experiments. It would make sense if someone who wanted to avoid that was putting pressure on the police.
おい、宮代?
It also depends what they think's happening. There's probably a lot of different opinions. I don't think you need someone to be putting pressure on the police for them to be very hesitant to announce it at this point. Or trying to decide how they want to announce it at the very least.
え？あ、悪い。なんだ？
あれ、どうするよ?
Ito pointing to the map on the wall. Don't take it down, at the very least.
片付けるか? もう使わないかもしれないし。
I stood in front of it again. The map was crammed with all the information we'd gathered so far. It all looked faded, like something that had happened a long time ago.
ああ、そうか。
I found 2 photographs on the map that I completely forgotten about. The 6th and 7th incidents in the New Generation Madness, Yummy Hand and DQN Puzzle. The notes next to them read October 28th and November 4th. Ooh, so one of those is like tomorrow, right? I mean, we should probably wait out another day before declaring it completely over, right? We should probably wait out to it not happening again before we come to any conclusions, right?
今日って28日なんだよな。
Oh,
そうだな。
Ooh, today is. Okay, well, we're very caught unprepared then. Someone's gonna die. Ito nodded. He seemed to know what I meant. And I saw another note I'd stuck up there with my own handwriting. It was one I'd been thinking about ever since I was told about Minamisawa's Senri's death. I can't talk today, apparently. Serial killer, multiple people, including pyrokinetic. I mean...
事件は終わったんだろうか。
終わったって言ってるぜ、みんな。それにさ、もし他に犯人がいるなら、23日だって南沢千里に代わってそいつが事件を起こしたはずだろ。
ああ、なるほど。
けど実際は何も起こらなかった。ってことはこの可能性は消えたってことじゃないのかな。
Ito took the note off the map.
もうやめようぜ。なんつうかさ、副部長が辛いと思うんだ。
Yeah, but if you...
俺。
I think we're too late to be able to make that decision. We need to at least let the day pass and see if anything happens. Probably give it another day just to see if anything pops up. Like how the police haven't announced anything for this. Are the police on high alert just in case? Maybe, possibly.
うん、そうだね。しんちゃんの言う通りかも。
ね。そっか。
I remember Kurusa's sad eyes when I told her about Minamisawa Senri's death. I'm laughing as I keep fucking up that name.
わかった。こいつの役目はここで終わりにしよう。
No, you fool. I slowly remove the map. Oh, the fools being foolish on the foolhardy foolishness.
けど、なんか、いきなり壁がすっきりしちゃったね。
It does, I suppose.
ずっとここにあったからな。
ねえ、また何か事件を探そうよ、タク。みんなをあっと驚かせるような事件。
Oh, everyone's surprised by psychics? Next time we're gonna figure out about magic and witches and wizards. Yeah, let's do that. Chaos Warlock something.
あ、そのために作った新聞部だもんな。
Sarah smiled again, the same way she always did. And Ito finally starts to grin too.
今度は副部長に怒られない程度の事件にしとこうぜ。
Oh, now it's more fun when she's chasing after us.
わかってるよ。今回の件でさすがに懲りた。
Even Kasugi turned away from her game and gave me a an agreement. She's been so very outgoing, etc., etc. Okay, well, is this No, yeah, it's been a while since we've been here, hasn't it? That night I finally went back to the RV, and that's probably where I'm going to call. Oh, maybe I should go farther. I'm trying to remember how much I've actually recorded among everything. Nah, we're probably not going to spend too much time here. Yui'd finally calmed down and stopped being afraid at night. If Dad, Kirisu, and Yuta were there, she'd probably be fine. Her old friend Yuki was there too.
やっぱりここは落ち着くな。
Yeah, I mean, I live by myself and I very much enjoy it. I'm very much an introvert that can really relax in a place all to my own. I sat in the chair and booted up my PC for the first time in a long while. My inbox was overflowing with spam. It was strange. It always used to annoy me, but now it felt like proof that I'd returned to my old life.
はい、ご苦労さんと。
Of course, I deleted them all immediately, but they didn't piss me off like they used to. Oh, it'll be like that soon.
さて。
Come to think of it, I'd forgotten because everything that had happened, but Gen had sold me the latest edition of Kokap Press and I hadn't touched it at all. I took it out from its hiding spot under my desk and started to flip through the pages. Felt like forever since I'd done that too.
1ヶ月目の恋人はどこまで許される？フレンチキス、それともディープキスまで OK?
I think in a relationship, you should be frank and simply ask what a person's okay with and don't cross that boundary unless their opinion has changed. I am a strong believer that not just in relationships, but in relations, both romantic and non-romantic, just being frank and being honest about your opinion and how you see whatever will achieve the best results, or good enough results at the very least, to keep everyone happy, which is the most important thing to me at the very least. What are we talking about again? Ah, why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here?
なあ、尾上、お前はどう思う？
I almost fell out of my chair. Sakura standing behind me, looking over my shoulder. How did he get in? Why am I not locking the door yet?
私としては1ヶ月とかあんまり関係ないと思うんだよね。
Wait, did it? Wait, oh, sorry, I completely misinterpreted. Are you gonna say it doesn't matter if it's like February or June or something like that? Or the first, second, whatever?
いやいやいや、そんなことよりお前いつの間に。
えへへ。ドアの鍵かかってなかったから。
Why do I keep not locking the door? Crap, I've been so busy reading that I didn't notice Serica.
だからって勝手に入ってくんな。ノックくらいしろよ。
でも、ノックは嫌かなと思って。
え？
タク、怖がるかなって。
She was right. If I heard knocking now, it might be bad for my heart. She might look like an airhead, but the nice thing about Serica is that you could always count on her to remember things like that.
いいか、繰り返すようだが、この本はいつもゲンさんに押し売りされてるんだ。僕が好んで買ってるわけじゃないからな。そのあたり勘違いするなよ。
Yes, the book that you're forced to buy and you don't want at all is definitely something that you would read. Definitely would read that. I put my cool cat press under the desk, back under the desk in a very cool manner. I want to describe what a very cool manner is, game. Do it. I dare you.
了解。のんちゃんには秘密にしとくね。
こら待て、僕はそういうこと言ってるんじゃないからな。
それでタコはどうなの？
何が？
だからキスはどこまで OK？
Okay.
何もしたこともないのにわかるか。
She seems oddly actually offended. Serica suddenly pursed her lips unhappily.
タコってば忘れちゃったの？
We had some random bullshit kiss thing, and that was like a really minor thing, but she actually took as important. There it is.
何をだ？
私としたのに。そのファーストキス。
何？
Okay, that's a reaction. I literally leaped out of my chair, hit my head in the ground, got knocked out, woke up like several hours later, and she was still there pouting. I kissed Serica? When? When? Where? How? Why? Cool cat press. According to Minamikata Kenji's column, in Cool Cat Press, the girl's first kiss was more important to her than losing her virginity. And that's why a guy who didn't remember his first kiss was a terrible man, he'd said.
まずい。
I was sweating, unable to remember a thing, but Serica just laughed.
まあ許してあげるよ。幼稚園の頃の話だし。
ってそんな昔の話かよ。びっくりさせんな。
And anyway, kisses in preschool don't count. Probably. But when I told her so, Serica looked upset again.
それより何しに来たんだ？家に帰ったんじゃないのか？
そうなんだけど、なんか少し寂しくなっちゃって。
は？
ほら、最近ずっとみんなで一緒にいたでしょ？もちろん怖い人に狙われたのはすごく嫌だったけど、それも仲間同士で助け合って乗り越えた。こういうこと言うとのんちゃんに怒られると思うから内緒だけど、私結構ドキドキしたよ。
そっか。
タクはどうだった？
僕か。僕はどうだろう。わからないな。
She suddenly leaned over right on top of me and reached a hand towards my computer. What are you doing? The sensation on my back was often warm. I didn't know how to react whenever she did something like this.
おい、重いからどけって。
Yeah, that seems like the wrong reaction.
重くないよ。失礼だな、君は。
Her white fingers gripped the mouse and she started to move it around.
部室でも言ったけど、私また新しい事件を探したいな。あ、これなんかどう？
Serica opened up a site for explorers of abandoned buildings, a popular genre. Most of the articles were about people going into abandoned village, factories, and mines. Bankrupted, empty amusement parks and department stores were also popular. They would write essays and upload photos. Yeah, that's pretty common. I've actually been watching a number of YouTube videos about stuff like that, video essays on abandoned places. It's weird that it brings it up because I've actually watched like a good amount of those just recently. Stuff like that makes for fairly good just like background noise watch. Like I can sort of tune it out a little bit if I need to pay attention to something that I'm doing, but it's interesting enough that I can still watch it. It's just something that's interesting to watch. Some sites would also write about bloody urban legends involving abandoned buildings or upload photographs with ghosts in them. That I'm less interested in.
こういうのはやり尽くされてるしな。あと背景の侵入って非合法だから学校の部活でやるのは無理だと思う。
つまんないの。
Sarah moved away from me, then laid down on the RV's bed. Then she yawned loudly.
ほら、そこで寝るなよ。
I turned around, but her eyelids were already closed.
早っ。
I quickly stood up and shook her shoulders.
おい、眠いんなら帰って寝ろよ。
今日は泊まってくからいい。
Who decided on that?
何言ってんだ。僕の寝る場所がなくなるだろ。
大丈夫。私小さいからベッドで一緒に寝られるよ。
そんなわけいくか。
Just as I grabbed her by the arm and tried to lift her up, my phone started to vibrate in my backpack. Well, as I don't actually know where this is going to go, this actually feels like a decent stopping point for what I'm going to be doing today. So, again, this committee thing is probably the most interesting wrinkle, and a lot of it feels like it's just teasing me with the fact that it's like they're so obviously making some poor assumptions about what happened. And it's just, it's a little frustrating. And I don't think that's going to go away until we get past that, So, this is probably the last thing I'll do for the end of the month, which means I'll talk to you next month, as I'll record across the next month again. So, I'll see you then. Drive safely, everyone.